progress.
That sort of establishes the fact that we're starting. Welcome everyone to our meeting this evening. Let me just pull up my notes so that I know what I'm doing. Sorry, just give me a minute. I said that and you started the recording and now I'm all right. Welcome everybody to our Provo Municipal Council meeting. It is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022. It is 5:32 p.m.
Chair Handley,
Yes.
I apologize. Your chair notes are probably wrong, but it's October 4th and September 20th.
Thank you. I'm just reading the script. Thanks so much. It is October 4th, 2022, but it is still a Tuesday and it's still 5:32 p.m. Meetings of the Municipal Council are being held in hybrid fashion. That is, members of the public can view council meetings on YouTube or Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chamber here at the City Center. I remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast for all to hear. My name is George Handley. I'm the council chair. I'm joined on the stand by Councilor McKay, our vice chair, Councilor Fillmore, Councilor Shipley, Councilor Ellsworth, Councilor Whipple, and Councilor Hoban, Mayor Kafusi, Wayne Parker, our chief administrative officer, our city attorney, Brian Jones, Justin Harrison, our executive director, and by staff who are helping us with our plans this evening. We'll have an opening prayer by, I was wondering if you could call on somebody since you gave it already this afternoon, because I didn't remember to get one, but Justin, go ahead.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we are indeed grateful for this opportunity we have to meet together for this meeting of the Provo Municipal Council. We're thankful, Father, for this country of freedom we have to live in, and we're thankful for this wonderful community and those who actively participate and serve one another. We're thankful for this body that's been convened. Bless that we may have our minds opened and be able to work through the issues of the day in Provo City. We're thankful for all those, again, who have taken time out of their day to come together to discuss the affairs of the city, and these things we ask for in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join us. The Pledge of Allegiance will be provided by Councilor Whipple. Allegiance to the flag. We have a presentation to award two companies that are 100% renewable energy participants purchasing shared solar. Travis Ball, our Provo Power Director, will make this presentation.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate this opportunity to come and recognize two wonderful businesses in our community. And thank you, administration. The two businesses that have participated in shared solar are Micro Focus and Mega Diamond, and they've purchased enough shared solar to be classified as 100% renewable. And we'd like to recognize them. And they're the first two companies in Provo to have that recognition. And I think they're showing an example to us of how sustainability can be done efficiently and I think economically. So first off, I'd like to ask Brandon to come up, Brandon Wilkinson, who is with Micro Focus, and Kat here's helping me with this. She's in charge of this program for the City of Provo, and she does a wonderful job, as you already know. Brandon. Thank you. And here's your award, and we have a letter here recognizing you as 100%. And we'd like to get a picture with the council because really you guys are the ones that allowed this to happen. So could we get a picture with Brandon?
Did you have a second one? Do you want to do?
Yes,
Okay,
we can do that too.
maybe
I
we'll,
also
yeah, why
have,
don't you go ahead and do the second one and then we'll come down for both.
The second is Mega Diamond. And if I could have Lonnie Allen and Seth Conway come up, who are representing them. In the old building, I know how the pictures. I don't know how to do the pictures in the new building.
Step forward.
So sorry. Step back.
All right. It's time for public comment. Let me just provide some instructions. As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will still be taken following presentation of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for an open public comment period, which is intended to allow comment on any matters that do not appear on tonight's agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to noticing requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium to assist our city recorder with the minutes. We ask those commenting in person and virtually to begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. Those participating on Zoom will need to use the raise hand function to indicate that they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. You will have 2 minutes to speak. So if there's anyone here in the chamber, I don't see anybody online. If there's anybody here in the chamber who would like to offer a comment during our public comment period, now is a good time. Thank you.
May I approach to hand these up?
Sure.
So I'm Lena Morford. This is my husband, Brian Morford. We live in St. George, but own a business that is down the road from here on Center Street. So that's why we are approaching you today. We wrote you an email, which is being handed out on April 20th about our concern of Provo City competing with private companies like ours. You had asked us a year ago to address these concerns before your fiscal year started this year, which is why we sent it out in April. I'm not going into details what is in the letter. However, I would appeal to you to bring the cost up for your services. We're talking about fingerprinting services. As we also mentioned in the letter, we're not avoiding competition. There is competition out there, and we're not asking you not to compete with us. But we are asking you to raise the prices to at least meet or at least match the prices that are in the market. We're located in 7 other cities besides Provo. Just for comparison, I would like to bring up how other cities have responded to us coming to their neighborhood. Just open a Price Sheriff's Office is going to stop their services altogether. They're actually really excited about not providing the services anymore as we are now in town. Utah State in Logan raised their prices to $25 and limited their hours of services. The common response to raising prices is that you're not able to make money, which you're not as a city. Well, raising the prices are actually going to prevent that because customers are only going to come here if they need that service. And we are not open, which we are open from 9 to 5 every day in Provo. I just at the end also want you to reconsider like calculating the man cost, the room cost of having these services available, and also competing with a private company. We have 4 employees in this office that are going to lose their job if you continue the service here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any questions?
We're in the public comment period, but
Oh.
we'll respond to you. You have your contact information here,
We do.
so
We do.
we'll be responding. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to make a comment during this time during public comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring it back to begin our action agenda. We have an item number 1. We have an implied motion on a resolution appointing an individual as an alternate member of the Civil Service Commission. This will be presented by Brian Jones, our city attorney.
Thank you, Chair Handley, members of the council. As you know, we have a Civil Service Commission in Provo. One of their responsibilities is to hear appeals of employee discipline. There's currently a matter under consideration where one of the commissioners is not available to act, and so we need to appoint an alternate. We need to appoint a member to serve in that seat for the current appeal. Bruce Haraguchi, if I'm pronouncing that right, is the person that has been selected by the council who is given the statutory authority to make this appointment. So there is a resolution in front of you to appoint him to the Civil Service Commission for the purpose of hearing that appeal. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Jones? Okay, seeing none, is there any discussion of this item? Okay, then I will call for a vote with a verbal yes or no. Councillor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore,
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
I, Councillor Handley, will vote yes. Councillor McKay,
Yes.
Councillor Shipley,
Yes.
Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The vote is unanimous. Item number 2 is an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code Section 4.01.010 regarding the process for making appointments to the Civil Service Commission to align with state code. This will also be presented by Brian Jones.
Thank you, Chair Handley. Again, this is just a code cleanup. While we were going through the process that we just discussed in the last item, we discovered that our city code actually conflicts with state code about where the power lies to appoint to the Civil Service Commission. So what's in front of you is a proposal to amend the city code to just match state code, and that's all that's happening. So any questions?
Any questions? Any discussion? Okay, thank you. I'll call again for a vote on the implied motion. I will vote first. I vote yes. Vice Chair McKay,
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth, Councillor Fillmore,
Yes.
Councillor Whipple,
Yes.
Councillor Shipley,
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
That is unanimous. An implied motion then on item number 3 is an ordinance approving a petition to vacate an undeveloped public street near the Springville boundary and approving a plat amendment and property exchange in order to facilitate the development of a new adjacent public street. This will be presented by Dixon Holmes, Assistant Chief Administrative Officer. Here. Oh, Mr. Parker.
Mr. Chairman, we'd actually talked because the item on the RDA agenda tonight is the companion item. So if Dixon's here, we're happy to present. And now the other option would be to move this item to the end of the agenda so they could be heard together, but we could go either way. So
Do you have any recommendation, Mr.
you have a
Jones?
preference?
No, either way is fine. There had been some discussion about city staff staying or RDA staff having to stay for item number 12. My suggestion had been, once you hear number 3, even if it's right now, you could ask questions that you might have about 12 and staff wouldn't have to stay, but it's equally, it works just as well to move 3 to the end of the council action agenda, but then staff has to stay.
Yeah.
So,
Let's give staff a break. So why don't we have this item now, and then we'll just ask all of our questions now. Does that sound?
So do we need to transition to the RDA board?
well, we don't need to transition. I just would say that, remember that and Dixon is going to explain here the entire proposal, that there are several pieces to the proposal. And so I would say if you have questions about any part of the proposal, even if it's the part that's going to be voted on later by the RDA, ask them now. But then when we transition to the RDA later, that's when you'll have your RDA discussion. The concern was we didn't want to move to RDA and then back out of RDA to council, which is why we left it at the end.
Okay. Go ahead, Dixon Holmes.
Okay.
Good to have you.
So, thank you, Council Chair, Council Vice Chair, Council members, Mayor. This is an item, again, down at Mountain Vista Business Center, our business park. It's been a long time coming. Just a little real quick history. I got involved with this probably 20 years ago. This is the former U.S. Steel site in Provo where they were making iron, coke and iron, hence the name Ironton. It's been a very large redevelopment project. Back in the day, we owned about 200 acres. Now we own about 25 acres. So all those 75 acres, 175 acres are now on the tax rolls, collecting property tax, employing people, and capital investment being made into the Mountain Vista Business Center. So again, that's all very positive. This is hopefully the last road that we're building that goes from the roundabout on Mountain Vista Parkway down to SR 75, also known as 1400 North in Springville. We have a road section here that was scheduled to go straight down. Then after doing some additional investigation, determined, again, an SR 75 is a UDOT road, which is limited access, which means you have to have a right to be able to access onto the road. And because there were 4 that were very close proximity, UDOT did not want 4 curb cuts, all within very close proximity to make a road. And so Provo City and several other property owners had to give up the right of access to actually get onto the UDOT road. And in doing that, we needed to shift the road a little bit to the west. And what that does is it creates a remnant parcel. There was already a remnant parcel there, which was a little bit challenging. And frankly, Springville City thought that we were creating this nuisance strip between our road and their community, and we assured them that that was not the case. And so what we're proposing then is so we actually have 3 items. The third one will be heard in 2 weeks from now, and that's a boundary line adjustment with the city of Springville. And I don't want to give a whole lot of attention there because I don't want to confuse the items, but just know that that's out there. So what we're doing this evening is vacating a portion of a city street that is really on paper. We're under construction, but it's not an existing drivable city street. And so we're vacating a portion of that. We are receiving a like portion from the property owner to the west. So the road just kind of curves over, and what we're giving up, we're receiving on the other side. So then we'll have 2 parcels, one being owned by the Provo City as the entity and the other by the redevelopment agency. And that's what the item is later this evening. So what we're asking the council to do is approve the vacation. Brian, correct me if I explain this incorrectly, because I know we've kind of rehearsed it and it's a little bit challenging or complicated, but what we're doing is we're requesting that the council authorize the mayor to enter into an agreement to dispose of the property. But by doing that, we're also vacating a portion of the street.
Yes. So from a technical perspective, what's happened is the city has actually filed a petition, which seems a little bit odd because the council is the one approving it, but it's what state code requires. So the city has actually filed a petition to vacate a portion of a public street. The council is being asked to approve that petition, and as part of approving that petition, approve an amended plat of the subdivision that shows the new ownership of the land, with Provo City acquiring a piece from SPHL. No, yeah, that's right, from SPHL Properties, and Gateway Crossing acquiring a piece from the city. And then, as Dixon's probably about to say, number 12 on the agenda is there's also a piece here that's actually owned by the RDA. And so the item number 12 on the agenda is an approval of the RDA to also transfer their piece of property to Gateway Crossing developers in order to complete the entire transaction. After, as Dixon mentioned, after those 2 pieces are done, then in your next meeting, you'll be asked to actually adjust the boundary line of the city so that the transferred property ends up in Springville.
Now, again, some may be asking, well, why are we just giving this piece of property away? Well, one of the property owners to the west, or to, I'm sorry, the East Gateway Crossing, that access that they had was actually worth quite a bit of money. And they didn't have to give it up. We've been working with the property owner there, whose name is Steve Turley, for some time now. And he had requested that in order for him to give up that access right, that he be compensated in some way. And because now we find ourselves with this remnant parcel, which would frankly be very hard for the city to develop and not really developable for our purposes, and he owns the adjacent property, that seemed to be a fair trade. We actually had an appraisal done, which showed to be very similar in value. And so we felt that was a fair trade without actually having to write a check, but in exchange for his right for giving up that access. And then the piece that the SPHL is giving us, they really want that road. They understand that we need that section of road, so they are giving that to us, and we'll be building a road on that section. So, any questions that I can answer? That's an overview.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Holmes? Okay, seeing no questions, we'll open this item up for a public hearing. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to comment on this item? Okay, seeing no one in the chamber, no one online, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Again, if there are any questions that are relevant to the item later this evening. Discussion of the item? Okay. Then I will call for a vote on the implied motion. We'll begin with Vice Chair McKay,
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore,
Yes.
Councillor Whipple,
Yes.
Councillor Shipley,
Yes.
Councillor Hoban,
Yes.
and I, George Handley, will vote yes. So that is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. And I think you're safe to assume that you're not needed later this evening.
Never bet against you.
All right, we'll have, go on to our next item on the action agenda, an implied motion on a resolution approving a venue use agreement between Provo City and Salt Lake City, Utah Committee for the Games regarding the use of the Peaks Ice Arena as a venue for the Olympic Games and authorizing the mayor to sign that agreement on behalf of the city. This will be presented by Scott Henderson, Parks and Recreation Director.
Thank you, council members, administration. So before you is the Olympic venue agreement for the Peaks Ice Arena, which was our 2002 Olympic Games site for men's and women's hockey. This agreement addresses the timeframe, operational impacts, financial considerations, and post-Olympics restoration of the facility. We are asking for the council to approve the mayor to sign this agreement. I will leave time for Colin Hilton, who is the president and CEO of the Utah Olympic Foundation, to give us an update on the Olympic effort and let us know what is the latest news in bringing the Olympics back to our wonderful community. But I do want to thank the Utah Olympic Legacy Foundation and Colin especially for their leadership in venue funding strategy for improvements through the state of Utah. He has been absolutely tremendous and advocated very well for Provo. So Colin.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be in front of you tonight. I have the pleasure of having worked with Scott and the team with the Peaks Arena over the last year as we talked about doing an agreement for use on either 2030 games or a 2034 game. So just a real pleasure. I have the privilege of going around the state on behalf of the bid committee to propose these agreements between our respective communities and the bid committee, which will turn into, we hope, an organizing committee. So I believe Fraser Bullock was before you in the last 6 months or 8 months, giving an update. A brief pickup from that conversation is to say the International Olympic Committee loves everything we're doing in Utah, but they keep moving the goalposts a little bit later. So if you have seen a little bit of the news, whereas they had stated they would make a decision in the end of May of 2023, they've pushed that to October of 2023. There still is a possibility of them moving into a targeted dialogue with a region like Utah as early as December or somewhere between December and March of next year. So that is a bit of the timing change compared to what Fraser mentioned to you. We spent 3.5 hours on a virtual call with the International Olympic Committee, so it's not like we're not doing any work. We are moving ahead, and in the beginning of next month, we will be presenting to them lots of materials, including all of the overview of which Olympic venues that we have venue use agreements. We're about halfway through, so thank you. You're right in the middle here. Most of those government entities are really good on timing, and the for-profit ski resorts are the ones that are giving me a little longer time. So overall, the process of doing this is really good. We've looked at a way of making the operation whole in terms of the use amount and the time frame that we are looking to use. We're looking to help with some separation between the soccer field and the main arena is a long-standing thing to do at the end of this project. So happy to answer any questions, but the spirit of what we're doing tonight is reason for celebration in my mind. We thank you. Our effort in Utah is so organized compared to a lot of previous efforts in this thing, and it really showcases the warm and hospitable and organized effort we have here in Utah, and I thank you for the consideration of approval tonight.
Thank you. Any questions? Ellsworth.
I think that when the Olympics come in 2030 or 2034, there will be more than hockey at this venue.
The honest answer is probably not.
Okay.
Because of sort of the need of having two venues for hockey, the other being Maverick Center. Curling has historically been in the Ogden Arena, so hockey is a great sport, and I think it really matches. Again, I know a lot with my kids playing hockey at the Peaks Arena. You have a very vibrant, growing program, and I think a lot of the youth will be excited to see that.
Yeah.
A little bit different from the last time where it was primarily the women's hockey venue. We do view it'll be more of a 50-50 split between men's and women's hockey games.
But probably not figure skating.
Probably not, because the I wanted to say Delta Center, but the Vivint Arena is the targeted venue for figure skating. Yep.
We'll have to get our short-term rental ordinance fixed in the next 12 years.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Okay, we'll bring this open this item for any public comment. Anybody in the chamber would like to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, there's nobody online. I will bring it back to council for any discussion. No discussion. I will call for a vote on the implied motion. I'll begin with Councilor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore. Councilor Whipple.
Yes.
Councilor Shipley. Yes. Councilor Hoban.
Yes.
I, George Hanley, will vote yes. Vice Chair McKay.
Yes.
Vote is unanimous. Thank you so much. All right, we'll move on to item number 5. And let me just are we wanting to, should I read all 3 items? So item 5, 6, and 7 are a bundle, if we want to think of it that way. An ordinance amending the general plan map designation from commercial to residential for property generally located at 5544 River Run Drive, River Bottoms neighborhood. We're also going to consider an ordinance amending the general plan designation from mixed use to commercial for the same property. And we're going to consider an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 14.45 acres of real property at this location from research and business park, RBP, to medium density residential, MDR, also in the River Bottoms neighborhood. And Aaron Ardmore will be our presenter, city planner. Go ahead.
Thank you, Council. So just to clarify, items 5 and 7 are dealing with the same piece of property. Item 6 is actually on the other side of the river.
Right.
Against
Sorry.
University Avenue. But if we can go maybe to the slides. I understand our director did a very good presentation of this 2 weeks ago. And I'm just following up now with updates on what has transpired since then. So just to give you a refresher, this is the property that's proposed to go from mixed use to commercial for a future rezone and development plan for offices. If we can go to the other map that focuses on the residential part. Perfect. Thank you so much. This is the area that's currently general plan for commercial that is proposed to go to residential, and tied to that is the rezone from the RBP zone to MDR zone, medium density residential zone. The discussion 2 weeks ago, I understand there was a bit of concern about primarily a trail network going through this property. If we can go to maybe the next slide. Someone that shows the concept plan. There we go. Thank you. You could see the trail network here that starts on the south end of the property that they control. Go all the way up through the north along the river. Since the discussion and concerns were brought forward 2 weeks ago, and since then, the applicant has been working on a development agreement that would secure that area all the way through the entirety of their property against the river, 40 feet wide, I believe it is, with a 10-foot wide asphalt trail along that side, the west side of the river, that would have a perpetual public easement, public trail easement through there. So it'd be owned and maintained by the property owner, but would be free for the public to access. So we believe that hopefully addresses a lot of the concerns that were brought forward in the previous hearing. On top of that, we're confident moving forward with this group and their ability to address other issues with the upcoming project plan submittal, the final site plan submittal that they'd have to come through city staff and the planning commission with. I believe the applicant is here and has some additional images to show you regarding the trail, but that's all I have prepared for these items.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question
Yeah,
here?
sure.
Maybe the applicant wants to answer this. Counselor McKay and I were just wondering what this linear stream-like depiction is. That's just south of the,
Right there.
yep, that one.
Yes, that, you know what, the applicant's going to be able to describe that better than I am.
Sounds good.
So let's leave that to them.
Let's invite the applicant to come forward
Great.
then.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Kafusi. My name is Jim Ivory. I'm with Folger Pratt. We're the developer that's working with 50 East in tandem to develop this property. To answer that specific question, that stream that's kind of shown meandering is the West Union Canal. It is a canal. There's some farmers out in West Provo that still have those water rights, and I believe the city is working, and would like to acquire those rights. And so we don't plan on touching or taking a drop of that water. We would like to move the stream. The beginning and end point will be the same, but we're proposing to move it slightly so that it works with our site plan.
And did you have some other slides you wanted to show us?
We do. If now's the time.
Please, yeah.
So I may invite Jason White, who's with 50s Capital, to address the council on these specific slides.
Thank you. Good to see everybody again. Yes, if we could just advance the slides, we can go. We're not going to try and rehash the whole thing from a couple weeks ago, but a couple things that we just wanted to make clear, and as we're going through this rezone process, one of the things that we wanted to point out was that we currently have a right to build office on the river site. So where it says RBP, we have a right to build up to 245,000 square feet of office. So if for some reason switching the zoning doesn't work, then that's our default. We thought that was bad for a number of reasons, for the business park and for traffic, and especially as we try to build an incubator that's going to be a landmark in Provo. Tucking it back by the river doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And so that's one of the reasons why we decided it was best to flip these. And so if we don't have the ability, because we can't flip the zoning, then we're going to have to build residential on University Avenue. We're going to have to build office back by the river. And while we think that's suboptimal for the city and for the business park itself, we can only do what we're allowed to do. So just wanted to clear that up, because I think there's been some misconception that somehow this could remain dirt forever, and something's going there. We think we have a much more optimal plan to get there with this new rezone than this current plan, but just wanted to kind of point out that something's going to get built, but we want to make it the best that we can. Next slide, please. So here's the trail system as we expressed since the last meeting, is that currently the trail goes from the bottom right corner, and it goes, and you see the arrow that then points north. It comes across and goes across the bridge, goes out to the Provo River Trail, and then heads north up the canyon. And as we've had discussions subsequent to our original plan, it seemed like there was quite a bit of folks in favor of maintaining that. It doesn't currently exist down the west side of the river, but maintaining that access seemed very important to a lot of folks. We were in favor of that up front. It didn't seem like it was popular earlier, but now it's popular. So we're totally fine going back to it and adding that into the plan. And so as you see now, the river trail would go up and down the west side, and it would also cross to meet the Provo River Trail. And we wanted to address green space because there were a number of comments 2 weeks ago that were suggesting that, you know, we should have more green space. So we ran the math and wanted to see how much green space we actually had. And so our total site area is about 663,000 square feet, and about 213,000 square feet of that is green space. That's including clubhouse, including the pool, and then everything you see basically in green here. And our net kind of green space is over 30%, which is very substantial relative to a lot of developments. And so we just want to make sure we did that math for everybody. So we don't get caught in the mechanics of how to calculate this, because at the end of the day, you know, community space and green space is important, but it also needs to be kind of couched in the right math, so that we're not just looking at clubhouse and pool, because that's not how we look at green space in the development world. So we want to make sure that we pointed that out, because we want this to be lower density, you know, lots of walkability and lots of enjoyment of the river trail. And there's a 40-foot setback on the river, along the river. So there's a lot of space between the buildings and the river. And so we want to make sure that we were addressing that. And then we have heard from a number of folks that are concerned citizens that have, you know, various stakes in the community. This is from one of the primary tenants up just north of the townhome site. And this is the primary tenant in that building. And this goes on to say, this is from their CEO, Dave Decker. And his suggestion was that this is going to be great for their recruiting and great as they try to woo some talent from whether it's, you know, north like Lehigh, Salt Lake Valley, that now they can attract people with new upscale housing that's right next to their headquarters. And so it allows them a little more flexibility in recruiting that they don't have currently.
Just want to clarify, this is not the same Dave Decker who's our Public Works Director here in the city of Provo.
Not to my knowledge.
Unless he has two jobs.
I think he might be moonlighting, but I can't speak to that.
I was a little thrown by the name for a second there. I was like, wait, what? Okay.
And then as we get to the site plan here, I wanted to yield a couple minutes to my business partner to walk through kind of the vision of what we're trying to do here, because I think the vision is almost more important than all the mechanics. And so if you would oblige, if we could have a few minutes just to kind of express that vision a little bit better, if that's okay with the council. Okay.
So first of all, it's good to be here. I haven't been in one of these since the Boy Scouts. But that being said,
You state your name.
I'm Ryan Smith.
Okay.
I think the work that we've done with the city of Provo over probably the last 10 or 15 years has been nothing but extraordinary. And I want to talk a little bit about the origin of why we're here. Okay. We started Qualtrics in the basement of our house on Lakeview Drive. And from there, we moved to a building that touches up against the lacrosse fields on Canyon Road. From there, we moved to a building because it was the cheapest office space we could find. And it was stuck between what is now Vivint and Qualtrics. And we leased 17,000 square feet. And we ended up being super fortunate at that time and growing till we took over the entire building, and we couldn't fit more people there. And we were at an impasse. We were at an impasse because every company, for the most part, then leaves Provo and moves to Orem. At the time, we were moving to Lehigh, Salt Lake, or even San Francisco. And we had just taken on venture capital as a business, and our outside board members couldn't understand our fixation with wanting to stay in Provo. But Provo's where we started. It's where I grew up. And every press release we released came out and says Provo, Utah. And we wanted to keep that to be that way forever. there was an opportunity to do a deal with Marinda where we could literally move next door. And it was the largest open office space in Provo at the time, and the largest building in the Riverwoods of 160,000 square feet. And we said, hey, wait a minute. If we can go here and pick up more land around, maybe this is an option to keep our headquarters in Provo, Utah, and be able to tell that story for the next 10 years. We were able to create more parking with your help and push, because we were parking everywhere and picked up a lot across the street. We acquired the old Imagine Learning building and created the largest daycare targeted towards working mothers with 40,000 square feet of daycare in the Riverwoods. There's not a week that goes by where we don't have people flying in from all over the world to tour that daycare in Provo, Utah. We just were able to improve the old UCCU campus bank to a pretty impressive dance studio and offices. And we had this land that we had acquired throughout this process that was going to have to be the expansion, but we figured out a way with working with you all to expand Qualtrics to another 100,000 square feet on that existing property. And so during the time, we had a couple of options. A lot of people have called and wanted to acquire this land to put up apartment complexes, to do more commercial. And it just really didn't seem right. We saw that there was a missing component, which was the front door as you enter Provo, Utah. And the way it's set up or approved was, hey, it's okay to go and put a multi-story apartment complex the way the current zoning is, and then take the Provo Orem land, which sits behind, and go ahead and put, a couple 100,000 square feet of office and tuck that in there, which we know what that's like to operate, and it does create a lot of challenges. But we said, actually, what if we created a creative office space? What if we created the first real incubator for tech and business that exists really in Utah, and invite people from all over Utah, from the universities, from all over the world, where they can even live here and actually birth their companies in what we think is probably one of the coolest business and opportunity environments that exists. And what if we can do all of that in Provo, Utah? And we think that's what we have here. It's something that I think that we could all look back in 20 years and be incredibly proud of. The way that when I drive by the Riverwoods and see the shopping center, I'm super proud of it. I remember my stepfather actually helping develop this entire project when he was the mayor of Provo. And this seems like it's the right option to improve the front door of welcome to Provo, and be something that Provo will advertise going forward as a selling point, like we have a lot of the other things that we've done here. And we know what it's like to be in Provo. We haven't wanted to leave. We know what it's like to be a Provo citizen. We know what it's like to support you all, support the Freedom Festival, support the airport, support what you care about. And so I think I would just look at the track record that what we have all done together for the folks who are in Provo, helping build Provo, is just as you think through this. Because I think the way it's currently set up, if you flip these around, it's just the same as everything else when you enter Provo. And we have a chance to do something iconic, including with the river trail and everything else. So that's the vision. And Jason and the group has done an amazing job with it. And that's something that I'd be proud of in 20 years. So I don't know. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Excuse me. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Councilor Ellsworth.
Yeah, I'm not sure who can answer this. I think we brought this up last time, but there was some incentives provided, I think, to Qualtrics for maybe a parking structure adjacent to the river And I'm not sure whatever became of that project. I thought it was to be discontinued, but I'm just trying to get some clarity there.
I honestly don't know.
It might be our staff has the answer.
Looks
Yeah,
like
I
it
think
is,
that's probably something that you looked at. I know that the parking enhancements are pretty good. All right.
That project's been approved, and from my understanding, I think Qualtrics is just on hold on that for now. I think they were trying to determine what was going on with because of the pandemic, a lot of people went home and there wasn't a huge demand for it at that point. So they just kind of paused the project until they might need it, but it has been approved. The redevelopment agency's been created for that area, but it just hasn't been actually activated yet. So
Is there going to be a parking structure built next to the river?
that's the plan. Yes. To the current Qualtrics. That's what their plan was.
Okay, not in this immediate
No,
site.
these are separate projects and separate entities.
Okay, yeah, that's the info we didn't get last time. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Any other questions? Mr. Fillmore?
Mr. Smith, I've been an advocate quietly of this project since I first heard about it. Can you maybe just share your vision of the incubator? I mean, just expand on that a little bit, because I personally, I chair the Economic Development Committee here on the council.
I think like, and it's really interesting because we're gonna basically construct a major, like with forward-thinking design, something that's super appealing as you come in without a tenant. And we're gonna set up collaborative space where if you're a startup sitting in one of the universities, or you have an idea, that you can come in and get coaching, you can come in and get financing, you can come in and just work with folks who are in the same spot or know how to help increase your chances of being successful. There's a lot of really smart people, especially in our culture, with ideas who want to go build something. And the physical location matters a lot as you dream up of like where you're going to go. Like when we came and moved into the Marinda building, or when we moved out of our basement into Canyon Road, those things played a massive, massive role into the success of our companies and the lives of what's turned out to be 6,000 employees. And so I think what we want to do is help companies locally and nationally come here and have a much better chance of winning. I also think that there is an academic side of it. I think there's, I've recently started teaching classes in the business school to just try to figure out like, okay, how do we increase the chances where we can continue to get more out of students in Utah, or maybe help them not fall in some of the holes that we've fallen into. And so how that works and how that becomes, a lot of that's going to be built as we start going. But if you actually look at the setup there and imagine that, I mean, what currently happens at Qualtrics is our employee base is leased a lot of the apartment complexes around, and they're walking back and forth to work. I mean, the amount of people who are doing that, it's tremendous. Imagine having that kind of work and live environment. I don't think you could really do that in many other places. And to be able to call that the entrance of Provo, as well as make it something that is kind of one of one, is something that's going to get a lot of attention nationally. But I also think it's something that we can call ours. And it's something that you can be proud of. It's something that the city can come and use. And so that's a little bit of the vision. I've seen it before in San Francisco. I've seen two different sides of it where there's a few companies in there that are growing and they kind of go and then move on. Or you come in as small and you incubate in there for 6 to 12 months and then you kind of move on or you stay in. And so I think naturally people are going to want to expand close by. I think they're going to want to stay here. I think they're going to want to recruit the talent that's going to want to stay here. And it's just a chance to continue to build what we've done here, in Utah County and Provo specifically.
Two related questions, if I might. You're going to be incubating promising companies. Structurally, how do you envision retention of those companies? Who has limited ground, right? For future buildings and expansion. Do you have any particular plan for assisting these companies to stay in Provo? Once they're past the incubation
Yeah, so the question is like, how many of those companies are going to be able to find the next phase of office space here locally and stay in Provo? Is that it?
Right.
Yeah, I think we do have limited ground, but we also, I'll be honest with you, I think the way that we're working is changing. I think the way that we use space is changing. And, just coming here, I just passed 2 large commercial buildings that are empty. I know the Wells Fargo Tower's been empty. I know East Bay's been empty. I know that we have space. All right. And the problem is we also have a habit of people growing up, and we just lost another massive tenant out of the Riverwoods that will be coming out. And it hurts because they probably are the next big tech company coming out, an award code that just moved to Pleasant Grove. And I think that there's an opportunity there to keep all of that's good with it here. And it definitely has our DNA.
Are you going to have a particular focus on the technologies you're looking to incubate? For example, we have an evolving biotech incubator, East Bay, with the medical school. You're going to focus on computer science, the internet, or are you more eclectic?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, our core competency is software. It's one of the things that we've done a great job with in Utah, but I don't think we're limited. I mean, if you look at some of the innovation that's going on in the Riverwoods, it's retail, right? Where there's a lot of shops that are popping up where they're creating online fronts and then having a storefront as well. There's a lot that we're open to. I think one of the best things around this type of innovation office is you shouldn't close your mind to anything. And that's a beautiful thing.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
All right. Thank you so much. I think we'll open this item now for public hearing. If there's anyone who'd like from the public to speak to this item, please come to the podium, state your name and city of residence, and you'll have 2 minutes.
If I
Or
could
did
maybe
you want to,
read
did
in.
you want to talk about the other items first?
No, if I could
Okay.
read in a few public comments that we received.
Oh, yes, please.
This afternoon through
Okay.
email, just so they're on the record. Greg Bird, and I'll hand these to the chair after. Greg Bird lives at 4112 North Edgewood Drive in Provo. He and his wife are in support of the development and wanted to acknowledge that on the record. Tammy Sue Bird lives in the Provo River Bottoms, also supports these proposals. And then Trevor Anderson, a realtor in who resides in Provo, also supports these proposals. So I'll hand those comments to you so you can review those.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Please.
Hi, I'm a resident here in Provo. My name is Danny Bird. Greg, it's his birthday, so they're out celebrating tonight, so they emailed in. I currently rent in the Georgetown townhomes, just right across the street from the Riverwoods in the Vintage Park neighborhood. And just want to support this project plan. I'm someone who's owned 2 homes here in Provo for 15 years, and in April sold those homes and found it really tough to find a place to live. So I'm totally for a project like this. We need a lot of places down in that area for residential living. My place was tough to get in within 30 minutes. They had 12 applicants, people willing to pay 2 years of rent and cash up front with no renovations made to the units. And it had been not renovated since 1994. So projects like this are much needed. I wasn't aware of it until recently in April and May, where I found myself renting and looking for that next best thing. So I'm grateful for developers who are willing to put a lot of time and effort and energy into providing great assets to your city. I've been a resident, for 15 years, and I love Provo and welcome this project and give it my approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sonny Shake Snyder. I work for Active Environmental. That was a long walk, sorry. I'm the director of talent and recruiting there, and I actually live in Harriman, Utah. There's something really special about Provo. Like Ryan Smith, Vesey Pearson, who is the CEO of Active, is super passionate about keeping his business there. But one of the problems that I have to attract talent is finding housing. And when you look at the talent today, these are people that are wanting to walk to work. They're wanting to something a little bit more upscale, professional. And that's the one thing that Provo is really missing in that area, that there are specific people that I've recruited that I can tell you had a hard time finding housing, and no, they don't live in Utah County. They had to go to Lehigh and other areas. So this is a really great project that I wanted to come support because I know it would help me in attracting talent.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Ronald Woolley, part owner of the building just to the south of this project. And the other three owners of buildings that join this property are not here tonight. I believe that they would agree with me that we feel that, or at least I feel, that had we been a part of this process from the start, that we could have reached an accommodation that would have been a win-win for all of us, those that have boarded the property and those that own the property. And maybe we still can. I mean, I still hold out hope. But the other three have decided that this was decided before we even saw the notice on the property. From my point of view, I'm very pleased that the path is going to go through. That's a win for us. That's a very important thing for us. What we're giving up with this is the setback. The commercial setback is what we were required to have, and now the residential setback is much, much smaller, so that there's really no place for the children to play. They'll look across the boundary to the south and see a lot of green open space, and they'll look across the street to see a lot of open space, and that's the sacrifice that we're being asked to make. I do think there's one place where we can have a win-win, and that's the intersections with 800 North and with University Avenue. We would all benefit if cars could turn left at those intersections. UDOT's position is that they have to do a traffic study to authorize it, and that means they have to wait for enough accidents and enough injuries and enough fatalities before they can put in traffic lights. I think if we all work together, we could get that to happen with a theoretical study that would show that we really need traffic control at those two intersections in order for the number of cars that'll be coming from this residential area. And even if it was all commercial area, we would still need that to happen. So I hope we can work together on that. And I wish we could have been notified early on that we might have been able to make this project even better. And maybe we still can. I still hold out hope. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Any other comment from the public? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. By the way, the timer is not sounding. I don't know. Future public comment. Any comments from the council? Councilor Ellsworth.
Yeah, I think this is a great project. I'm really excited about it. I wish there were more such projects in Provo, and would love this to be built in any of our gateways. I think it's a strong product, and I would be happy to live there. I appreciate the developers working towards a development agreement and preserving that space for the river trail. A personal preference of mine that's not in city code is that trails are as straight as possible, because curvilinear trails are not great for pushing strollers or maneuvering wheelchairs. But otherwise, I think this is terrific, and I think we should move forward.
Other comments or discussion from the council on this item? Mr. Hoban.
Yeah, I drove out there and looked at the property, and obviously looking forward to seeing that developed as opposed to, what it is today. So that'll be great. Appreciate you guys investing in Provo like you have, and will continue to, hopefully. The Heritage School, I wonder if there's anything the developer can do just to try to, with all of the construction and such that will be required and trucks going in and out, to help on a fencing side to maybe create some privacy there for them. I'm not going to ask you to commit to anything, but that would definitely be something that I think would be appreciated by your neighbors. So whether it be some sort of slatted or covered fence or there. So maybe just be cognizant of that as you guys good neighbors in that sense. Otherwise, really excited for something. There was a question around an environmental impact study with the coal being dug up and things like that. Any new information on that?
The Provo process starts with zoning and then it goes to project specific approvals. We have in the last couple weeks gone back, reviewed all of our environmental documents. We are also going to commission some additional geotechnical engineering to go geotechnical sampling, and as part of that, we'll have an environmental tech out there observing everything. But I'd like to point out we purchased or our 50 East purchased the Ron Last Park from the city. And we went back and looked at our purchase and sale agreement and all the disclosure documents. There's nothing in the documents indicating that Ron Last Park is a fly ash dump. But regardless, because we've heard about it, we're going to go out there and dig holes and find out, and we'll present all the environmental findings as part of the project plan approval if we get to the next step with you guys.
You need to come up to the microphone. Thanks.
When we purchased this last part up in Orem, the amount of studies that were done were significant for fly ash, like significant. That went through about 3 or 4 hands, and I think was purchased from the water folks. And it was deemed okay as we did that because we wouldn't purchase it until that was done. And so I don't think we've done anything on Ron Last Park, but I imagine that's going to be part of the process definitely going forward.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Whipple.
Yeah, so I would like to echo my fellow council members that I'm excited about this project. I think that this will be a beautiful place to have houses for people to live. And if they are going to be working close enough that they can walk or bike there, so much better. They're close to shopping, they're close to the canyon for recreation. It just seems like a really great place for people to live. And I honestly like it better off of University Avenue for the home and have it by the river. And I like the idea that you would turn your creative office space into kind of a gateway statement entrance to the city. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate that you're looking at expanding that little stretch of trail that you'll have stewardship over and preserving public access to that. So as I've been looking at this project, I've walked through the park, I've walked on the trails there, I've looked at the property from the University Avenue side, and yesterday I went and did a tour at the Heritage School and the Scenic View Academy so that I could see it from that side of the street and look into it. And it was interesting talking to the administrators of those schools and what their concerns were. And it seems that if you've already got it designed with, trees along that way, so kind of a landscaping barrier. I think if you do that so that you have the privacy between the residential area and the school area, then you'll be able to minimize potential conflicts, worries about, kids who are either little children who are residents getting into the school area. We can avoid that happening, or worries about students who are in these schools who may be walking outside, taking kind of a mental health break, working with one of their aides or something, to have them protected. I think that you could do that. And if you do that, then what you would have is a beautiful residential area with greenery on the west side that protects it from, the schools and the other commercial area, and then wonderful greenery in the river on the east side. And I think that would make your project even stronger and more attractive and meet your goals. So, like I said, I'm just super excited, and I really hope that UDOT will work with us to get lights and better access at these two intersections, because that will serve not just your project, but all of the existing businesses and everyone who's there. So thank you.
Counselor McKay.
I love this project. I think it's gonna be fantastic. I think it's imperative that you switch the residential with the commercial, so I'm glad that's happening. The one gentleman who spoke, the commercial project, I think this picture shows it well, isn't it? This, on the south side, there's the commercial building that's kind of long and narrow. What is the barrier going to be between that property and residences? It's kind of like, yeah, no, where the green, where their space ends, like is there gonna be a fence dividing it? Yeah, what's the transition? Grass?
Currently, there's no transition.
Okay.
But right now there's several hundred lineal feet of distance,
Yeah, it does
between the two
look-
properties. We haven't proposed fencing this property because it is open. We've designed a road to public standard that connects
Right.
Provo and Orem, so it's not a gated community.
Like that transition looks more than 10 feet, right?
Oh, it's far more than 10 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Sorry, can I steal another minute? One other point I wanted to make is, so in the bottom right-hand corner, there's two buildings on where the cursor is. The one to the right there, we own that one, so we also, share similar concerns with the building just to the north. And right now, all of that is open along the river trail. If we're gonna keep the river trail open, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to start putting random fences in that you just walk around. It's the same issue with the heritage site, is currently there is a fence. We're going to do all we can to landscape and to create, a visual barrier, but these aren't closed campuses, so we can't really fence their campus because that's not, we don't own their property. And so, we're going to do our best to keep this open while also making sure there's safety issues that are addressed with, making sure kids don't walk straight out their front door onto a street or something like that. But yeah, there is no intent to put a bunch of kind of haphazard fences around just to create barriers. So,
Right, makes sense.
Could you state your name one more time for
yeah,
the record?
Jason
Sorry.
White, 50 East Capitol.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jason, question for you while you're still there. Have you made any progress on the 1550 East extension onto 800 North in Orem? Any progress with respect to traffic lights, that kind of thing?
Oh, we might need another night for that. We have spent a lot of time with Mayor Kafusi, with Mayor Young and Orem, with UDOT commissioners, UDOT district. I don't exactly know what the title is, but whoever runs the district, the local folks. And the difficulty is it's not really a resident driven process. And so as much as we pounded the table and said, we sit here and watch recs all the time, they basically said, well, our hands are tied. And so it's a very political process. And so I think that what we would need to do is create some inertia between Provo, Orem, and just start pressuring, the whatever touch points Provo has at the state level, because it kind of has to come from their bureaucracy down. And we learned very quickly that from us up went nowhere. And so even though they were in agreement to some degree, it was like, yeah, we're in agreement, but we also have handcuffs on because we don't make those decisions.
That's just a tragedy waiting to happen, right? Because you're gonna
Oh,
have-
yeah. Well, I mean, and just the other day, there was a wreck at that intersection and they sent all the cars across that bridge you see on the left side. And that bridge is not designed to carry that traffic, but whose problem is it, right? And so that's where UDOT kind of says, we have our 20 things we're working on in Utah County. You're over here. So like, if you ever get over here, we'll let you know.
Well, I think we agree. We need to move it higher up UDOT's priority
For sure.
ladder.
Well, right now it's not even on their list. And so we need to get it on their list and then we need to move it up the priority. But I think it's a lot of political will to get it there because they need pressure from the top down because it, clearly our voices don't go very far up the ladder. So
Thanks.
no problem.
We'll work with you.
Thanks.
No, sorry. Any other comments from the council? I'll just add my thoughts. I'm thrilled with the project. Thrilled with the commitment to Provo. We thank you for that. I think anytime we have people who understand the value of our community enough to want to invest in it like this, I think it's a real benefit to the community. So I certainly feel very appreciative of that. And I'm grateful, as has been expressed by my fellow counselors, about your willingness to help with the development agreement to mutual satisfaction. So I'm ready to vote on this. I think we are ready, unless there's other discussion. So I will call, let's see, Brian, do I need to read each one and vote independently? You need to vote 3 times?
Yes.
Okay. So let's start with number 5, the ordinance amending the general plan map designation from commercial to residential for property generally located at 5544 River Run Drive. I will call for a vote beginning with Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Chair Hanley will vote yes. Vice Chair McKay.
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, that was unanimous. We'll then vote on the implied motion on an ordinance amending the general plan designation from mixed use to commercial for property generally located at 5515 North Edgewood Drive. And I will begin with Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Chair Hanley will vote yes. Vice Chair McKay.
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore.
Yes.
Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Okay, that is also unanimous. And then finally, an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 14.45 acres of real property generally located at 5544 North River Drive from research and business park to medium density residential. And I'll begin with Councillor Hoban.
Yes.
Chair Hanley will vote yes. Vice Chair McKay.
Yes.
Councillor Ellsworth.
Yes.
Councillor Fillmore.
Yes.
Councillor Whipple.
Yes.
Councillor Shipley.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. That is a unanimous vote on all 3 items. And we appreciate the work by staff and by the developers for your assistance, and for the community for providing input and feedback on this development. We'll move on then to item number 8 on our agenda, which is an ordinance amending the general plan section 1.2.9 Lakeview North Neighborhood and Appendix C5 Lakeview Fields SDP. This is in the Lakeview North Neighborhood. Aaron Ardmore, City Planner, will present this item.
Okay, thank you. The applicants on this, just to clarify, are actually Jay Henry and John Jensen. I believe both are here tonight. So this request, if we can move to the slides, I can go through the kind of the background and overview first, and then to the actual request. So here's property that's somewhat related to the request. So the request has come from a proposal to develop these 2 properties that are highlighted in red. 1826 and 1804 are on the same property, I believe, and then 1878 is a separate parcel. So these 2 property owners have both submitted separately rezone requests and concept plans. The rezone requests went above the density that the general plan calls for in this area, west of I-15. So this general plan amendment came forward to address that. I have the next slide. Here's the existing appendix. So in effect, their general plan request is both a general plan text amendment and a general plan map amendment. And this is the portion of general plan map amendment, because this is the appendix to the general plan. This would need to be amended for them to develop the way that they are proposing, rather than this R110 layout. Next. So overlaid on that now, you can see their concept plans as currently proposed. Those are still in review with staff, so these may change. They still have to go through staff and planning commission, but This kind of gives you an idea of what we had with the R110 in the current general plan to what would be proposed with the LDR zoning. You can see a mix of townhomes, twin homes, and single family lots. And just noting that the area highlighted would go from 48 units to 94 units with this change. Next. And these are applicant slides. So the text amendments, let me just run through those real quick. The actual text in section 1.2.9 of, thank you so much, of the general plan is really just asking where it says overall maximum density of 4 or 3 units on those separate sections. They're proposing to add the language for 2.7 units or 3.27 units. So expanding that from a hard line at 3 or 4 net or 3 gross, expanding that to up to 7 units per acre. And again, as you can see noted on the left, this would essentially double. Now these changes are not just for these properties, right? So these general plan policies apply to everything west of I-15. I think that's a really important thing to note, that these changes would in effect double the amount of available units to be built out there. You're all familiar with how we got to these numbers of 3 units gross, and the planning that efforts that have been done in the past. And staff is wanting to hold to those. A lot of that was from the wastewater capabilities, right? Capacities of our sewer system. So I think it's important that we stick to that. The other proposed amendments to this text are just limiting or reducing the lot size for small lots from 8,000 to 4,000. Again, resulting in a doubling of potentially a doubling of those small lots that could be built around the city on the west side. And then I think that was it for the text amendments. Do we have another page or no? Okay. Oh, and then the area referenced in the appendix C5 that we saw on the map earlier calls for in this subsection 5 on the bottom of your screen, calls for a specific development plan, the R120 or not to exceed allowed density for the southwest area. They're just proposing to add or very low density residential onto that to make their plan work. So hopefully I've illustrated their proposal, staff's concerns of the financial burden that this could have on the city with sewer and water systems, as well as kind of undermining previous planning efforts. That's all I have. The Plan Commission recommended denial, and I'm here for any questions that you'd have.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Yeah, I spoke with the city engineer, I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, and he said that there was excess capacity on the west side in terms of the sewer. And I'm just wondering if there's any clarification on that. I'm very familiar with the fact that, or the idea that many of these policies were written around those limitations, but he indicated that there was sufficient and excess capacity.
Yeah, and I think that's partly true, right? So they modeled the southwest area, everything west of I-15, for what is currently indicated by the general plan as proposed buildable area. And I think there is a little wiggle room on that. There is some buffer that can go one way or the other. But with that being said, I would point out that the Public Works staff recommendation for this item stated major concerns with the requested action, saying, I quote, "The current general plan for this area was used to model and design infrastructure, including the recently constructed Southwest Sewer Lift Station and large sewer trunk mains. The current general plan zoning density of 4 units per acre was used for sizing these facilities. Altering the general plan to a higher density here could have major financial implications for both sewer and water utilities." So I think while there is some wiggle room within those areas that I call out for increased density on the west side, this is not one of them. And I think making this kind of major change really causes concern for our Public Works division.
Any other questions, Councillor Fillmore?
I'm struck by the fact that the planning commission rejected this unanimously. Can you tell us their reasons for that?
Essentially, they were kind of in line with staff recommendations. You know, a lot of planning efforts were put forward since, you know, at least 2016 to come up with the Southwest future land use map. Some of these policies that the council has recently adopted. And on top of that, opening it up to this kind of thing where there isn't capacity to do it unless there's really large financial investments by the city to once again increase that. I think those were their major concerns.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Ardmore? Okay, thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Whipple.
Yeah, so I recognize that we've got limited land on the west side and limited sewer capacity. And I'm wondering if you think that we've already zoned enough area on the west side for commercial and other non-residential uses?
Zoned, no. But if you look at the Southwest future land use map, I think that we have designated key corridors, key nodes in the area, especially southwest, west of I-15 south of Center Street. We've really drilled down and found those important areas where commercial would be viable, where a little bit of increased density, LER, MDR would be viable. And I think those are opportunities for developers and property owners to take advantage of. I just don't think this area.
Well, what I'm wondering is if we will need to be designating more areas as commercial, would that allow for greater residential density in some areas that are not there? Do you know what I mean? Like if we've got a finite set of land and some of it goes to commercial, then couldn't we increase the residential density in some of the areas?
I see what you're saying. If the commercial takes a larger portion of it, can we transfer that residential density? And I think the Southwest area plan kind of imagines how that would play out. And along Lakeview Parkway, there's several nodes of commercial and density adjacent, as well as Center Street and against the freeway. And I think even Broadview Shores has a good mix of density and idea for commercial land out there. Time will tell. We can make adjustments as we go if things need to be adjusted, but I think that we have a plan that took a long time to get to and that people were happy with, and I think we need to stick to it.
All right, if there are no other questions, I'd like to invite the developers to make any comments they'd like to make.
My name is John Jensen. It is good to be in Provo. Thank you, Mayor, Chairman, and other council members. We appreciate being on your agenda. For us, it's been 5 years. We've been asking to come before you and tried a lot over those last 5 years. And so thank you. This is good for us. So we're in a weird spot. We proposed a subdivision concept, and through the planning process, we were instructed, well, you'll probably need to do a zone change. We're like, okay, that makes sense. And then in addition to that, you'll also need to do a general plan amendment. So I asked, okay, what part of the general plan do we need to change for us to have a chance at our zone change, which may come in the future? And so the things that were changed were more or less the things that I thought were what we were supposed to change. And so in our planning commission meeting that we had last week or the week before, when staff, I guess, informed everybody, I feel like it was good to know, because I think it's healthy that we are on the same page. Our application, we thought we were changing that, which is our subject properties right here. This is already developed right here. This is our subject property, and then there's some farmland here. Sorry for the small image. And then there's some vacant land. We thought that's what we were amending on the general plan amendment. And so when staff indicated that we're changing everything west of the freeway, in my experience, that's a really big ask. We didn't necessarily intend that. So here's the interesting part. If Provo City really wants to change all of west of I-15. I guess tonight's your night. I just don't believe that's what your intent was. It wasn't our intent either. Obviously, that would help us if that happened. Our ask is this. We've been trying since 2017. We had a neighborhood meeting. In 2018, we had a metering study. That subsequently led to the city telling us, you're just going to have to wait to do any land use changes. The city's not comfortable for land use changes. We have waited about 4 years for that, which is a long time. We noticed early in this year that Ivory was able to do some land use changes for them. They were different. It was a preliminary plat. When I saw that, I was like, hey, maybe this is our chance to come back. So maybe we have this moment now. We wanted to do something cool. Our concept plan, which you saw for a moment, included something different. It wasn't just, this was produced, I think, and I apologize if I'm misquoting this, back in like 2012 or 2008, something. It's pretty old. But it was very traditional for that era. So we wanted to do some twin homes, wanted to do some single family. We wanted to match what was existing close to us. It does increase the density for our particular 5-acre piece, which is out of the total 15, we have 5. Our density on our version would be 5.5 units per acre. That can sound like a lot. It maybe isn't that much. I don't know. It just depends. We thought maybe a mix of housing units would be a healthy thing for Provo. We definitely made these choices because we were trying to bring down the cost of these products. Having smaller pieces of property, having smaller homes generally means maybe the price point would come down. I like to believe so anyway. Maybe that's not the case tonight. Maybe that's not where we align. Maybe Provo City doesn't feel like that's the best choice for tonight, but we hope that we're not crazy, but we're not also trying to change everything on the west side of I-15. So what I'm really saying here is maybe you can direct us. Maybe you can give us some advice. Maybe you can say, instead of denying us tonight, maybe you can table it unless you want to approve it. And say, hey, maybe if that's your intent, maybe you just need to tweak your general plan amendment. That may not be a path that exists. There may not be any way to do what we're trying to do. We'd like to believe there's some hope still, though. We really understand that there are some technical stresses on the city with the sewer. We appreciate the efforts the city has done to increase the sewer capacity and help. I just want to maybe also point out, which thank you for some of your comments about commercial uses, which maybe that allows for other creative ways to allow for more residential. Again, sorry for the small map. There is a chunk here that is currently in agricultural easement, which was to prevent any houses being built. So right now the city's planning for so many units that was calculated in the sewer numbers. And while we are asking for more density, for sure, and this vote tonight may allow us to ask for that zone change later, there is some units right next to us that supposedly will never come, right? So I'm going to just say there might be some credits out there that maybe we can borrow, that maybe there's some space for our units as well. Maybe that's an interesting detail. So ultimately, if our intent is worthy, maybe there's a way to move forward. If you feel like we need your maybe direction, maybe that's another way for us to help stay current in our application. But either way, there is 2 applicants here. Jay Henry is the other one. Lynn Dayton and Hassan are the other landowners as well. I know I would like to yield some time to Jay, who has the 10 acres south of us.
Thank you. It's good to be here with you. My name's Jay Henry, live in Orem. Been there since we came to BYU about 50 years ago. Graduated as a civil engineer. I've spent a 30-year career. Well, I worked for a private consultant for a while. Worked in the Orem City Engineering Department for about 4 years. Worked for Bureau of Reclamation, retired after 30 years. And then I've done 10 years of consulting and engineering, all in water development and water management. I appreciate the staff's report. I was thinking coming over here, somebody will ask, why are you even going? The staff reports is recommending denial.
Planning Commission is recommending denial. I served on a planning commission in Orem for several years as well, not too many years ago. So why are you even going? Well, one big reason is I would hate to be turned down based on misinformation or misunderstanding. That's why I appreciate you being here. I hope we can talk about I'll make it quick, but some real live things, facts, rather than what would be, the things. I appreciate the staff report, and it all comes, well, a lot of it comes for the two things that Mr. Ardmore mentioned. There are two or three things. One is the sewer capacity. Another one is a general plan amendment covering all of west side of Provo. And then the fact that there was a study done 15 years ago or so. They went through a lot of work, 2 years of work to put that plan together. And so we need to stay with that plan. I think that's a real faulty argument. Just because you went through a lot of work 15 years ago, things have changed considerably in the last 15 years, in the last 2 years, the last year. Affordability is a crisis. Water conservation, Great Salt Lake is the lowest it's ever been. Housing in Provo, well, I don't need to tell you this, but you've got a lot of rental. We're not proposing rentals. We're proposing for own homes. Doubling housing density does not mean doubling sewer effluent. In fact, I'm not sure that it would even double the sewer effluent. If you look at one home, we're proposing 64 units on my property. And if we went to the current plan, it would be 32 units. And so so it's double. So if you look at one home, a 4,000 square foot home, how many people are going to be living there? And then you tack on sprinkling accessory dwelling units. And there's going to be quite a few people on average living in a large home. If you look at what we're proposing, and there'd be 1,600 square foot, so it'd be 3,200 square foot, as opposed to 4,000 or 5,000 in a big home. And my plan is to make them all so that they could be 55 plus. People like myself. My sister tried to find something. There's nothing there. The 55 community just up the road from us sold out. In fact, they had waiting lists. I talked to them. I think there's a big demand for that. And so I'd make mine, and I doubt if if there's any more actual people living on site. And I agree, I've spent time sizing aqueducts and facilities, and generally there's a capacity in there. So I think using sewer as a reason to deny, in my view, is a reason to deny something you don't want. It's not valid to use that as a reason to deny this increased density with the units. Now, one other thing that I think would be significant, I'll just take a minute on this, is a gray water reuse. And this is something that's, it's been around for quite a while. I talked to Division of Water Resources a couple of days ago, and the only place they're using it in Utah is in Moab. But gray water reuse, you can retrofit a home to take the shower water and the dish or in the washing machine water and put that out for agriculture. But doing it from the get-go, from new construction, he said that that's very popular in Arizona and California, especially in the Phoenix and Tucson areas. And so we'd propose that we would offer, if engineering staff wanted us to look into maybe implementing a gray water reuse system in our project. It'd be, we're going green. We're doing something a little different than just the traditional, let's build homes and, go out and spread them around. And that especially has big impacts on the sewer effluent. The study by Division of Water Resources that I've reviewed, of the water that's used inside, 60% of that could be reused. 40% from the kitchen sink and the toilets would be going down. So if you take, even if you had double density, double people, you take 40% of that going down, you're still actually having a benefit of sewer. So again, on the sewer, and then on the general plan, like John mentioned, our thought was that we were just doing our area. That's where we were. I understand that city councils and planning commissions and others don't want to change for one area and it spreads all over. Now, I don't know if you have the ability to either require others to use, reuse water if they go to that density, or just put it on this specific area. We leave that up to you. But that's my view on it.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
We have any questions from the council for either the applicant or staff? Mr. Fillmore?
Yeah, I'd like to quiz the staff just a little bit. I don't know if that's Mr. Pepperoni tonight or someone else, but wanted to get some things clear in my head, if I might. So I'm on the fence on this a bit. We have an acknowledged need for affordable housing. And I think I've heard that Public Works has signed off on this, that we have adequate sewage capacity. Is that right? So what are the primary concerns that the staff has about this project? And what recommendations have you made to them that they might moderate their proposal to make it acceptable?
So we meet with developers very frequently, not quite weekly, but certainly monthly or more than monthly, who want increased densities on the west side to achieve some of the things you're talking about, or just simply because property values are so high, they want more density. 6, 7, 8 units to the acre, you can do a lot of really creative things with mixed housing densities and types, and you can do some neat things with that. The problem we have is that this is flat, open farmland on the west side. Most of the west side is flat, open farmland. And I don't know how you say yes to this developer and not yes to the next guy in the door. This isn't at the intersection of two major roads that would suggest a higher node here, like we did on some of the Southwest plan and some of those areas. We meet with developers constantly and tell them of this density limitation. And I'm sure these developers were told of the density limitations many times over the last 2 years. I just don't know how we say yes to this and not yes to the next guy in the door. And the developers will line up very quickly to ask for increased densities if this is approved. We don't have the infrastructure to do much of this. Could this happen and be within our system? Yes. It's not that many units, but how do you draw the line to the next guy? This land is very comparable to everything else on the west side, flat, open ag land. That's one of our big concerns.
So what is your recommendation to developers like these gentlemen in order to get approval for some kind of an affordable housing development?
Anytime you have to amend the general plan, we try to make it very clear that you're pushing a rope uphill. That makes it difficult for the city to support and for the council to say yes. In Provo, we've got the zoning in place for thousands of more units, apartments and condos. We've got general plan designations for hundreds more on top of that. When somebody wants to amend the general plan to do more density, our general attitude is your plan has got to knock our socks off, or you're asking for something we didn't anticipate and didn't expect. Is there some merit to what they're proposing and the different housing types and things? Yes. In today's market, yes. I just don't know how to achieve that and not lead to other problems that we can't deal with. We try to make these issues very clear to developers over the front counter because we get this question a lot, as I said.
So number one, you're constricted by the general plan as it applies to the Southwest area. Number two, you're afraid of the domino effect.
Yes.
Now I will acknowledge that the Southwest plan, as Mr. Rudmore said goes from Center Street south over to the I-15. We haven't done that level of planning north of Center Street up into this area. So we rely on the general plan statements like what Mr. Ardmore was reading and referred to. Now, this is unusual in that when that subdivision you see at the top of the map, that those elbow in that cul-de-sac, when that got approved, that's when that zoning got approved and that development got approved. That's when all this other got master planned. All these other parcels got master planned. It's unusual to have an appendix in your master plan that shows lot by lot what you're expecting to happen. That's unusual, but all that was negotiated in order to get that to be able to be approved. Okay, I'm not sure where that leaves us. I agree. I also agree with them that things change over time. Markets change, market factors change, but that's why you have a process to amend general plans. But I think we're better off to do a neighborhood plan for this area like we did south of Center Street and try to determine what areas are appropriate for higher densities, what areas are appropriate for commercial nodes, and what areas just aren't. In the Southwest plan, we absolutely did take density off the commercial areas and move those to other places. Exactly what Ms. Whipple suggested. All that was done on the Southwest map. All that was taken into consideration.
So you see the developments of a neighborhood plan as a precursor to anything else we might do by way of amendment.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor McKay? Okay, now, Councilor Hoban.
Hey, Bill, so I'm curious if they came and proposed something, because they basically said, well, give us some direction then, right? And so I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I'm just curious if they came and proposed something more closely to what is up there in that upper left corner up there, is that something that's more viable to potentially get approved? Like similar to what was kind of planned for it originally?
Well, the plan up there, what you don't see off the map to the left or the west
is apartments, right? Yeah.
Right. And all of this was done in order to help that apartment justify that apartment node.
Right.
Okay. So the idea was, if we say yes to this apartment node, we're putting this into place so we don't have this domino effect of the next guy saying, well, I want apartments too. And the next guy saying, well, I want apartments too. All of that was done.
So all of this was planned to kind of look like that.
Yes.
And so is something like that more viable though, that's what I'm saying. If this group came back and said, okay, well, let's go back to kind of what was original, they could still develop something probably, right? I mean,
yes and no. I have no idea what they paid for the land. So I have no idea how.
Okay. So financially, right. You don't know how viable it is, but I'm saying from our standpoint, that would be something more viable from the city standpoint, 6, 8, 10,000 square foot lots.
Yes.
Kind of more traditional. Maybe after tonight, they even have ADUs, who knows, right? But they're, but something more typical. So I guess I was just kind of curious from the city standpoint, right? So I'm not saying it's viable for them. I'm saying viable from a city standpoint. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Just curious if there was a potential path forward for them. Sounds like there is. It just needs to be less dense, basically.
Yes.
Thanks.
Sorry, Mr. Pepperoni, I have another question. So two things that I wonder about that I heard. One is the gray water issue. I know Dave Decker presented to our Natural Resources Committee a couple of weeks ago, and he recommended that as a strategy the city ought to look into adopting. Obviously, there was an expense issue that we didn't have time to explore or understand at greater depth. But I'm wondering about both the agricultural space here and the possibility of gray water, if that's something that they're willing to put into the project. Is there something in between what they're currently proposing and more single family homes that look all exactly the same and probably are going to be too expensive for the vast majority of people in Provo? That's what worries me. I heard them say, they're looking at housing developments that are for owners, but they're hitting different price points. And that really rings a bell for me. And to hear the idea that we could creatively allow a little more of that mixed housing type if there's one really nice piece of open space already in the lot, and B, there's a willingness to produce gray water systems for the houses. That's a huge savings of water for us. Is that feasible?
Well, so the Gary Calder, who's the division director over water, pulled Mr. Ardmore and I aside after your study session and said that the gray water proposals have more to do with water savings than sewer impact. So certainly they have value for water savings, but the real limitation on capacity is sewer, and it doesn't have much effect on that. What I would expect would have seen more of by now in today's market is that the land cost is a major cost to the development and the developer, obviously. The next biggest cost is infrastructure. And if I were designing this or trying to do a project on the west side, I would have a big part of my property in open space, and I would cluster the rest of the housing density from the entire property. I'd cluster on half of it or 2/3 of it, because as you cluster that, you save infrastructure costs per unit. Okay, if you put 4 homes sharing one driveway, you don't have 100 feet of street frontage for every one of those houses. So those infrastructure cost savings can make a big difference. So that's how I would approach this. And I'm kind of surprised we're not seeing more of those ideas coming from the developers because of the high cost of land and infrastructure right now.
So that reminds me of the development north of Rock Canyon Elementary. There was a dual proposal of either 2 cul-de-sacs with 6 houses, or the current development, which had 18 units attached. It was for 55 plus. Average car rides out of the homes per day was much lower than a single family detached home. So the traffic was actually being lower. Presumably the water consumption was actually also lower. I don't know if we verified that with that development, but that development's been highly successful. That's not twice. That's, forgetting my math. That's 50% increase. So I'm wondering if that's an option. I'm just thinking of something in between. If we look at that clustering idea and we look at other incentives, I would trust you guys to work that out. I don't think what's being proposed tonight is feasible because it has massive implications for the entire west side. It sounds like that developers didn't even anticipate that that's what they were asking. I don't know how to account for that, but if there's a way to incentivize modest and creative alternative housing types for different demographics and different price points, that's a win-win for the city. As long as it doesn't, I think we're all committed to, not overtaxing the infrastructure, but it sounds like there are ways, as you yourself are suggesting.
Right. As you know, we own the Buckley Draw property. As you know, we've put that under contract with the developer. We are working hand in glove with that developer to do the type of development I just described to you, to be able to put single family detached homes at the low end of the single family detached market, cluster units to lower infrastructure costs. All of that is going into the plan I hope you're going to see in the near future.
Okay. Councilor McKay.
First of all, I want to really thank the developers. They were wonderful in their presentation and so respectful and explained a lot. So thank you. Okay, my questions. So I think it's important to note that Ivory did start developing, or they're going to be doing developing, but they are 4 units to the acre. They didn't get an exception on that. So I think that's important to acknowledge. Number 2, while there's absolutely a need for the lower end affordable housing, I happen to know 3 of the people that spoke earlier with Ryan Smith's development, the Birds, Jason, and Vess Pearson owns Active, and I talk to him all the time, and his recruiters, they have a huge time finding homes. They want $800,000 to $1.2 million homes, and they go live elsewhere because they cannot find the home they want here. So there is absolutely also a market for these single family homes that might be bigger. So there is without a doubt a market and a need for that in the city too, to keep these companies and their staff and the people they're trying to recruit, because they all go live in Highland out of those people that I spoke to. And Jason and the Birds are still renting because they cannot find the house that they want. And they're looking. So I think it's important to acknowledge that while we need lower priced homes too. And that is our entry. We need more of those entry homes, absolutely. But we are building thousands of apartments. And we also do need some bigger homes for families and people to stay here and be part of our businesses and stuff. But yeah, I love your idea of the shared infrastructure and doing something more creative on that end. But I definitely want to find a way to help these gentlemen find a solution and something that will work for their land.
All right. We'll open this up for public comment. Anyone who'd like to comment from the public on this item, please come forward and state your name, city, and you have 2 minutes.
Name Becky Bogdan, City, Provo, Utah. I have 2 minutes. I've had several people, neighbors from this, come to me and express their concern. I've had them send you guys all emails. Hopefully you guys are getting those. But just for the public record, they are concerned that there was an agreement for an R120 zone that was made throughout all the neighbors. And the general plan really is a map for everyone, not just the developer, but for the residents to know what to expect. And this does not even meet anything that they've even expected to come. The 4 units to an acre is something they expect, is something that they're not necessarily happy with because they'd rather have the R120 like they had agreed upon, but they're willing to compromise with that. They're not willing to compromise with the 7 units to the acre. Also, I will back up what Bill said. The Southwest area plan, all those undeveloped places like the sports park that will never develop, those were already put into the plan so that the whole general thing has 4 units to an acre. Those were given to the places that made sense along the Parkway, Center in Geneva, where we could have additional units so we weren't stuck with all of these single family lots, so that we could have a different type of housing. Also, I'd like to remind council that about a year ago, this went through again and Hannah presented to everybody. It just seems to always come up. And staff did come up with a plan on how we could have a variety of housing types within there's like 30% that has to be something and the other has to be something, with still maintaining that 4 units to the acre overall. So in my opinion, there's still ways for them to accomplish that. Do some bigger lots, do some smaller lots, just as long as your project altogether is 4 units to an acre. Everyone I talked to on the west side, this is what we expect. We went through a very long process for this, and it's upsetting every time it comes up. And it seems like everybody wants an exception for themselves because they have this great project. And I'm sure they all are great, but we do have these things for a reason, and we have spent lots of times on it. And just to plug, these seats suck. So if you could put some money, at least for that poor officer back there, and maybe some VIP seats, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you.
Unexpected editorial from Becky.
I'm one of the owners. My name is Lynn Dayton. I live 1 mile from this property. I do live in Orem. We've wanted to develop this for about 5 or 6 years, as John said. About 20 years ago is when the general plan was put in effect. Things have changed. A $300,000 home then is $1 million home now. We propose to build homes that are going to be in the range of probably $400,000 to $600,000. Not everybody can afford that kind of home, but with some townhomes and with some homes that are on these lots that are smaller lots, it'll allow some people some affordability to have some homes. You just approved land North Provo, 30 units per acre. We want about 4 to 5 units per acre. It's in an area where there's less population, and I understand that. But things have changed. Things are different now than they were 20 years ago when this general plan was made. I think there's a lot of people that would like to be able to have a home on a smaller lot that's not going to cost $800,000, $1 million homes. People can't afford those homes, especially with inflation and interest rates now. It makes it even worse.
we would like to provide some homes for people that are affordable. And I don't believe that what we're looking for is horribly dense. The area just north of us that you describe as homes, that's now in conservancy. There's not even going to be homes in that area now. That wasn't brought out, but that area is all in conservancy. So I do hope you'll listen to our application, realize that we are providing a need for a lot of people that can't afford some of these other big homes, 3rd-acre lots. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. All right, seeing no more public comment, no comments online, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Councilor McKay?
In regards to the density, it really is about sewer capacity, like legitimately. And that's why Public Works is saying, so we can approve the 200 plus over by in North Provo because it doesn't have a sewer capacity issue. I mean, that really is an infrastructure issue in that regard. So I think it's important to point that out.
Councilor Whipple.
Yeah, so I want to start by saying that I actually really like this project, and I like that the developers are willing to be creative and try to find a way to get housing that we've told the city and our people that we need over and over. They've listened to us. And I can understand that they could feel frustrated about that because they're trying to create what we've said we wanted. I'm really sympathetic to the idea that, you know, land next to it is not going to be developed. Why not take that density that would have been there and just scoot it over onto their property? So however many units are not going to be built on the easement property, add to theirs. That makes sense. I think the problem that we run into is if we start approving higher densities than what we've anticipated, we end up creating a race for developers, right? So whoever can get in their project, even if the density is higher, they get it in first, and then later property sellers or developers don't have the opportunity to build out the density, you know, the 4 units per acre or whatever they want later. And I think in a race, you sometimes get less thoughtful projects because you're just trying to get it in quickly. And I don't want that situation. I understand why we set 4 units per the acre, and I understand the sewer capacity issues. I'm not sure why integrating a robust gray water system wouldn't have a strong impact on sewer capacity if all that's going into it is what you flush instead of what goes down your sink or things. But that's a technical question that I don't know the answer to. I'm wondering if there's some way, you know, despite the reservations I listed above, if there's some way that we could approve higher density for this by not changing the zone description, but by rezoning these parcels. Isn't that what we normally do? When we get a proposal that we like, we find the appropriate zoning for that use. And I don't know why that's not being considered here. Is it because we are stuck on this 4 units per acre idea? The other issue that I think is relevant is we are contemplating expanding ADUs on the west side. If we did that, and this were built as single family homes that could have ADUs, internal ADUs in them, then you would in effect have 8 units per acre, right? 1 owned by the homeowner and 1 potentially rented out as a conditional permitted use to a tenant family. And I don't know why in principle we couldn't allow a development that has twin homes instead of a single family home with an ADU, keeping it under that density limit. So instead of 4 units per acre, 8 twin homes per acre, that you're not allowed to have ADUs, because you could have the same potential number of households there, but they could all be homeowners if it's set up that way with the HOA. And I would like us to be able to explore these kinds of creative solutions. And I don't want us to push away developers who are willing to engage in conversations like that.
Counselor Shipley.
Yeah, trying to think of something in some way of saying this that hasn't been said, but when Mr. Pepperoni was talking about, being consistent with a plan and opening a door, I guess that's an issue that rings true for this particular item that we're looking at, which is the general plan amendment. And I think this project probably has good merit. I think this project could be a decent project. I appreciate, the opportunity to review it, but we're looking at a general plan amendment that affects the entire west side. And I can't support the general plan amendment for the entire west side. So, maybe we do look at flexibilities. Maybe we do look at other things, to allow for some flexibility. That has to be consistent. There has to be a rule for it. We have to develop some thoughtful way of doing this, but just changing this when there's not support by staff, planning, public works, anyone internally to support this particular general plan amendment, I can't support it. But I hope we get projects that are creative. I hope we have a way of evaluating projects that are creative and having some flexibility. But I think we need a rule for that or a plan for that, as opposed to opening a door that we don't have any plan or rule for.
Counselor Ellsworth.
I'll just repeat some of what my colleagues have already said. I think that there is an appetite to find that path and figure out what some of these flexibilities could be under a thoughtful process where maybe there's some opportunities for innovation or unique design standards or infrastructure standards. But where those haven't been defined and we don't have the criteria to measure this against, and it's not a strong proposal today, but I would be very much in favor of finding a path forward so that we are advancing some of our already adopted objectives and goals to diversify housing types and to allow for more home ownership and housing affordability.
Counselor Fillmore.
Like some of my colleagues have expressed, I'm feeling rather frustrated tonight. Not nearly as frustrated as developers must feel. We have a crying need for affordable housing, for a mix like they're proposing. I can't bring myself to change the entire general plan to accommodate this particular development, but we got to be able to find a way. Now, I would hope that you gentlemen would consider what Mr. Pepperoni was suggesting, that maybe there's a way to maximize green space and cluster your developments in ways that could accommodate what the parameters of what's available to you right now without trying to change the entire general plan. But I urge planning department to get creative and find ways to work with you to that end.
Counselor Whipple.
Yeah, so one thing that I heard was that we do have a Southwest area plan, but this is not the Southwest. We have not done this for the Northwest area. But I would imagine that if we were to do a plan like that, we'd probably wait, a year out before we could get an area plan for this that would help them. And I hate that it would take that long to do that. I also wanted to just ask about the status of our new general plan. So
what?
Weren't we doing a new general
plan?
plan?
We doing one? Yes, we were. We are.
So,
Yeah, so the update to the new general plan is about to go out to the department heads for them to review. Once they have reviewed it, then it'll be sent on to planning to city council. Well, yeah, it'll go to city council. We'll go through planning commission because they've already seen the general plan and sent it on to you. But that's about to go out to the department heads any day now. But let me clarify one thing.
over and over again, we talk about this 3 units or 4 units to the acre and affordable housing. Get that out of your minds. Okay. We all acknowledged back when these plans were done that it was not going to be affordable housing in the 4 unit to the acre range. That's why we have nodes of LDR and MDR on the map, because we all knew that at 4 units to the acre, even a couple of years ago when these maps were done and plans were done, that was not going to be anything close to affordable housing. So we have the 4 units to the acre, which is not affordable. And if we do our plan right, we have designated areas that make sense for higher densities. And that's where the affordable type units go. Okay. But it's never land.
Yeah, but
We're talking about 4 units to the acre.
Mr.
and affordable
Pepperoni,
housing.
we did have a discussion though about the possibility, right? About maybe not making it so that it's all one type and one type and one type, right? We were interested in integrating modestly, not super aggressively. That's all I'm thinking about.
Yes, we did absolutely talk about different housing product types within that 4 units to the acre. Absolutely, we did. Yeah.
And that would mitigate against the possibility where you have all of the density in one place and then all of the single family detached homes in another, right? Where you have different types of housing within the different neighborhoods. I think that's a healthier model.
Yes, it's economically harder, but it is healthier. When you're building a community, it is healthier. Yes.
Mr. Hoban.
Well, I was just going to say that. So Councilor Whipple, if they were to compact the units, they would still be affordable. They wouldn't be able to have as many units, but then they're building affordable housing, but it doesn't blow up the plan. But what Bill is saying is that doesn't work for them financially to develop that way. So that's why they're proposing all these units, right? But I like the idea of saying, okay, well, let's still build affordable housing. Let's still make these townhomes. You just won't be able to have as many because you can't fit that many units. But, unfortunately for the developers, it probably doesn't work. But I like that idea.
I want to remind the council it's 7:45. We have 2 more items.
Yeah, but those will be quick, won't they?
What's that?
The last 2 will be quick, right?
I'm just letting everybody know. I'm just going to go ahead and say my preference is to vote on this. I'm going to vote no. And the reason I'm going to vote no is because as it's proposed, for the reasons that have been articulated, it's not acceptable. And I will certainly hope that some sort of negotiation and further discussion will take place so that something more feasible will come forward. I feel badly for the developers, given the amount of time it's taken. I know it's hard, and I hope they understand we are trying very hard to get things right. We're in a unique position as a city to have to plan for a massive amount of land in the west side that it's not an exact science in getting it right. We're trying very hard to make sure we don't make mistakes there. And I'm sympathetic to the staff's concerns that we don't want to overhaul, undermine the process that's already taken place. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else want to make any further comments? Anyone else before Councilor Whipple, because she's had a couple of chances to speak already. Okay, Councilor Whipple, one last comment, and then we're going to vote.
I just want to clarify that the general plan we're talking about for this is the old general plan and not the new one that we're working on. So we're working from really, really old plans. Is that right?
Because we did the Southwest, we're talking about also,
This is not Southwest.
yeah, but it still goes against the South. The idea of what was, I see what you're saying. I think that's a general idea for the West though, as far as the bullet points of that Southwest plan.
But the controlling document is the old general plan that we are in the process of replacing.
That's correct, but I don't know, Mr. Pepperoni, we don't have any contemplation of getting rid of any of the area plans that have already been created, right? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to be sure I understood what the operative documents were. Thanks.
All right, I'm going to call for a vote on the implied motion on this item. I will begin with Councilor McKay,
No.
Councilor Ellsworth,
Oh,
Councilor Fillmore,
No.
Councilor Whipple,
I will say no in as much as the developers didn't realize they were asking for the entire zone to be changed.
Councilor Shipley,
No.
Councilor Hoban,
No.
and I, Chair Handley, will vote no. So that is unanimous. Thank you for your time tonight. We'll move on to item number 9, which is an ordinance amending the regional shopping center zone to allow animal hospital services as permitted use. This is presented by Aaron Ardmore. Maybe this won't be long.
I always try to be
Brownie's
short.
shaking his head.
So so we'll see. All right. So this one, if we could just go to the text amendment. I just have one slide on this. It is adding that use animal hospital services to SC3 zone. We do have 3 large portions of the zone in the city, the Riverwoods, what used to be known as the Mix, which is now River's Edge at University, and then the mall area. So those are our SC3 zones in the city. Adding this use to those zones, I think adds to the purpose and objectives of the zone, to be totally inclusionary for services, office, retail, in these regional commercial zones. Staff, while the initial proposal was to just add animal hospital services, staff suggested adding this parentheses subject to section 1434-259, just to make it very clear that the use does come with some standardized conditions that we believe mitigate any concerns that would come with the use. We are recommending approval on this, and I'm here for any questions you have on it.
Okay. Any questions? No questions. Any comments from the public? Yes, go ahead, Mr. Shipley.
Is there any differentiation between large animal hospitals and pet? I mean, I guess in my mind, I'm just thinking, are we bringing the potential for, farm animals, right? I mean, into a SC3, which could be a reason why it wasn't included in the first place.
That's a great question that I didn't even consider preparing for. So let me see if that is in that.
We just call it a pet hospital.
Service shall be limited to small animals only. So that answers that, hopefully.
Little Sebastian.
Little Sebastian.
All right. Any comment from the public on this item?
Becky Bogdan, Provo, Utah. I like it. I think the West Side would like it. I don't care if they have big animals in the SC3 one by the freeway by me. And I really don't think that West Provo is going to care. We have the smells, we have the sights. Let's do it. Well, I'm just disappointed it's in Northeast. Anyway, thanks.
Any other comment from the public? Bring it back to the council for any discussion. This is the first time this has been heard by the council. Any council member desires to consider this item at the next meeting? No discussion, so I will call for a vote on the motion. I'll begin with Councilor Ellsworth. Everyone hear that? That was a yes. I don't know if your microphone.
It was on. Yes.
Okay. Councilor Fillmore,
With the small animal restriction, yes.
Councilor Whipple,
Yes,
Councilor Shipley,
Yes.
Councilor Hoban.
he stepped out, but he told me to vote yes for him. Does that
Okay.
count?
Is that okay, Brian?
No, but I think we'll just excuse him and we've got
All right.
enough votes anyway.
Okay. I, Chair Handley will vote yes. Vice Chair McKay.
Yes.
So that is unanimous, 6 in favor, 1 excused. We'll turn to item number 10, an ordinance amending Provo City Code regarding accessory dwelling units citywide application. Malia Daly will be our presenter, policy analyst. Malia here? Oh.
Sorry, it's running the computer and trying to be over here. Okay, so this is a proposal coming from the Housing Committee, the Council Housing Committee that we've been working on this year. It went to the Planning Commission on September 14th and September 28th. Continued at the 14th
meeting because they had some questions, some follow-up questions that I'll actually go over tonight and kind of answer those. But then I'll go through the 3 amendments that are being proposed to change for Chapter 1430, which is accessory dwelling units. And if any of the committee members would like to jump in at any point, please do so. Okay. Actually, okay, so there's 3 amendments being proposed to Chapter 1430. The first of which is here on the right-hand side, underlined in blue. So this amendment is the use, and throughout all of these amendments, we're only talking about internal ADUs. I think that's important to note. That came up in Planning Commission. So these are just internal ADUs. So this First Amendment is the use of an internal ADU in areas zoned primarily residential use is a permitted use in all areas west of Interstate Highway 15. So this is the west of I-15 amendment, as we call it, just allowing ADUs in all zones primarily residential west of the interstate. So west of I-15. I'll just go through all of them and then we can kind of go back through and discuss each of them. I think that'll be easiest. The next one's on the left side. It's just a 1-word change, but it is pretty substantial. So this is the occupancy allowance. So currently you can't have more than 2 related or unrelated adults within an ADU. This changes it to 3. And this reflects the rest of Provo City Code, where the limit is 3 unrelated or unrelated adults living together, as defined under a family within a housing unit, rental or otherwise, and just as the rental code. So that's the Second Amendment. The Third Amendment, this is the planning commission language. So maybe if Liz can pull up the new language on base, we can read that. But this is the pathways way of bringing ADUs. So in work meeting, we have brought this to work meeting twice. And if you remember in the first work meeting, we had the 3 different pathways and it was kind of complicated and convoluted. And so working with planning staff, we reduced that down. So there's just 1 pathway. So this is what's currently published on base and is public for everyone to see. So someone can petition to have an ADU allowed in their home. And there's no minimum area, meaning you can petition to just have 1 parcel, 1 property, or you can have it as big as you want. As many properties together can petition on 1 petition to allow for it. And so the area in which that is proposed as part of the petition for the internal ADU, if you see in subsections 3, it has all the requirements for that. So the petition has to include the name and address and signatures of the owners of at least 66% of the properties listed in the petition, including the owner indicating that they are in support of the adoption. I will make a note here that upon legal review, when we are publishing this amendment, we noticed that there's some kind of logistical language about what happens once the petition is turned into the city and what that process is. And we have talked about that as a committee. We just it's omitted from this. So we need to go back through and add that language. So with that in mind, this is the first hearing. So I would recommend continuing this on to the October 18th meeting after we hear from public comment tonight and any initial discussion by council, just to give time for planning staff, council staff, and legal to make sure that we have the right language just for the logistics of the petition, which will also then be reviewed by housing committee before it's finally put onto the ordinance. And if you have any questions about that, please go ahead. So those are the 3 amendments.
And I think I'm just going to leave it there because we have had 2 work meetings on this. So we have had a lot of information, but open to any questions that anyone might have.
Counselor Hoban. So I think I brought this up last time, but cul-de-sacs, like what's a diagonal? I don't know. I think that needs to be defined a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. So we
That
have,
makes sense because it's round.
yes.
So what's across and what's diagonal? Probably there's a lot of cul-de-sacs, so we probably should clarify that, like what exactly that means.
Yeah, we can review the language of the immediate properties definition here and make sure that that's.
Yeah,
what's
not
covered.
trying to get nitpicky. I just think it will be a practical thing that'll come up.
Definitely.
People will be like, well, what's diagonal to me if I'm in, the regarding the pathway for the petition. That's cool that you guys were able to figure out, consolidate it. So residential properties, commercial, multifamily, I assume we're talking the residential properties adjacent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be specified to residential, and then would it be single family, multifamily? So that probably just needs to be clarified exactly what, who's going to need to sign the petition or who's going to count for that 66%. A big question I had, and I originally, with the west side, I originally thought that the Ivory properties like Broadview Shores, so they're like SDP 5 or something. And I noticed when I was reading it today that those are included. And to me, that's kind of like a whoa, because those are already pretty dense in some areas. Like there's 6,000 square foot lots. So for me, that's kind of a big hang up of those small lots. I'm not sure if was it intended, because originally I thought that those were excluded, but maybe I misunderstood. So I didn't want to get into too much of a discussion because that comes later, but that is a question I would like clarified when we do get there. And maybe you were about to clarify it.
Yeah, so the other requirements for an ADU, like having the necessary number of off-street parkings, would still apply. And it might just not be possible to get the 4 off-street parking spots on a 6,000 square foot lot. So there are other limits built into the code that would probably kick into play there.
All right. If there are no more questions for Malia, we'll open this item up for public comment. Please state your name and your city. 2 months. 2 months.
Perfect.
2 minutes.
I can talk on this for a long time.
Yeah.
My name is Ellie Dudley and I live in Provo. I am one of the lucky residents to live in an ADU that is legal here in the city. My husband and I live in the Tree Streets with an 80-year-old couple as our landlords who live above us. We were extremely lucky. Like I said, the demand for ADUs and just lower cost housing is really prevalent in Provo, especially among students, young families. And so the demand is there for this. We need more ADUs in the city. My husband and I left for the summer and we posted our basement apartment on Facebook. And we got over 50 messages within an hour of people just wanting our place for the price and the view, the amenities. We were so overwhelmed. And so I know people would rush to find places that are affordable. The cost of ADUs are so much better than the apartments and condos. While I love multifamily apartments and higher density, living in these apartments would cost us our whole paycheck, which we just can't do. Not only do they benefit us as students, but they also benefit residents who can get our rent and it doesn't go to developers. This is the best land use tool that the city can use because Utah is growing so fast with internal ADUs.
We don't have to change the urban fabric. The homes are already there and they're low density, which is great. And so I really support the ADUs. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Danny Dudley, so the aforementioned husband. So I also, like Ellie, live in an ADU with the 80-year-old couple, and yeah, I want to voice my support for this housing type. Speaking mostly just from our experience in that housing type. ADUs, I think sometimes there's this prevalent feeling that, you know, as students, we're only there for a few years and then we're moving off to a different city, but I want to emphasize the strong feelings of community that I've felt. I've really felt that I've been part of that community, that I've been benefited by it, and I've been able to benefit it as well. Just speaking from a few specific experiences, the day we were actually moving into our little apartment up in the tree streets, an older gentleman who was driving past stopped his car and introduced himself to us and invited us over to his house that Sunday for dinner. And we've been going over to his house every Sunday afternoon for about an hour, hour and a half. We consider him to be a dear friend, especially in his old age, as his wife has been in a nursing home. So we've really appreciated the opportunity to spend time with him, to feel like we can really buy into a community in Provo while we're here. Additionally, we've been benefited by, you know, the relationships that have been developed in while living in the ADU. Our landlords have been extremely helpful for us, you know, whether it's, you know, lending us different tools or screwdrivers or even jumper cables as we've needed them. We've been able to help them shovel their driveway as well. And so it's really a mutually beneficial relationship for us. And I just want to, you know, in closing, just reemphasize that sometimes there's this sense that there's a real stark divide between students, you know, at BYU and members of the community, but we really feel like we are part of that community. We've been able to buy into it and receive a lot of benefits from it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky Bogdan, Provo, Utah. I am seriously for external ADUs. I can see the benefit for that. I can see how the city has had problems in the past with cutting up the existing homes, especially in my area where we need the move up homes so desperately. And it's a lot easier to convert your basement into an ADU when it's brand new than it is to retrofit it into something that's already existing. I'm really concerned about this for the West Side. I'm really concerned how it would affect it. I keep on going back to Eric Chase. North Park allowed it in, and now they don't have any move-up homes. We need move-up homes for our executives. We need move-up homes to balance out what we've already got in West Provo. There are so many reasons why we need the move-up homes, why the West Side asked for the move-up homes, and why this is here. Please take this into consideration. Also, please, if we're going to continue this anyway, see about holding a public meeting and explaining this to the residents, giving them an opportunity to come in and see what exactly you're proposing and what they're in for before you make a decision. Because this is a big decision. Anyone that followed Planning Commission meeting knows that they debated about this for 2 sessions as well. The enforcement has always been a problem. Even cutting up the homes is another discussion they had. There's a lot of the same concerns I have that Planning Commission had as well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Chair, members of the council, my name is Lee Sands. I live in Provo. I like to speak in support of this. I happen to live in a zone that already allows for ADUs. And so as a practical matter, I feel like I'm one of the winners in the lottery of who gets to have an ADU. And I don't see how coming up with a petition process, that seems very cumbersome. In my view,
make it easy for everyone to understand and make it less cumbersome by allowing these citywide. Seeing that the inclination is to continue, that's the read I get. I just want to make another comment that from my perspective, I feel like the detached ADU has more stigma, but it shouldn't. The reason being, and going back to the earlier item, you will see some really cool projects and typologies if you allow for detached ADUs. You can have one property that's a big single family lot, $1 million home. The next parcel will be a smaller home with a small ADU in the back. If you allow for people to build their own ADUs, you're just going to get that mix that you were describing. So I would say I don't understand the stigma behind detached ADUs. It's the one that I would like to be able to construct for a whole number of reasons. So I just want to speak in support of just having affordable housing in general. I do the math on this kind of stuff, and ADUs will enable people like me to have homes, to be able to pay for them as well, right? And providing a very affordable housing on a small ADU in my backyard sounds amazing. I'd love to do it. So give me the right to do so. Thank you.
Dave Connects, Southeast Provo. I would like to ditto those comments about detached ADUs. I don't understand why we're not looking at them more seriously. They have lots of advantages. And, if I had the money and the choice and the property, I would do it detached rather than my basement or whatever part of my home. I would not chop the home up. This is a really big change that you're contemplating, and I'm really surprised that there's not more people here. And perhaps that's just because they don't know. And maybe we should be trying to get the word out better. I wanted to read you what I found in the American Heritage Dictionary of English Language, the definition of a social contract. And I do think that when we do Vision 2030, the general plan, zoning, even development agreements, that these are agreements for the community, for developers, for the administration. And so the first definition is a usually implicit agreement among the members of an organized society or between the government and between the governed and the government, defining and limiting the rights and duties of each. So defining and limiting the rights. And number two, an implicit agreement of or contract among members of a society that dictates things such as submissions of individuals to rule of law and acceptable conduct, zoning laws. An implicit agreement, number three, among people that results in the organization of society, the individual surrenders liberty in return for order and protection. So we do have, I think, social contracts going on. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public?
Hopefully Bill doesn't fire me after this. My name is Abinadai Borja. I live in the northwest side of Provo, but I'm also a code compliance officer for the city. ADUs have been a subject within my team for a while now. Excuse me, I sound a little bit nervous. I really am not, but the reason is, personally, I love ADUs. I love the ability to have a place where I can be. I have a sense of community, and that sense of community has been iterated by some of the people back there. And I do believe that with ADUs, a lot of the younger folk have a sense of belonging within the city, a sense of affordability as well. However, I also do believe that ADUs should be structured in a way that where rules regulate ADUs, we should follow them.
There are a lot of ADUs on the west side that are illegal. So having this come into effect, easy, simple. They all become legal. It doesn't make my job easier, but they all become legal and everyone is in a better place. But the city really focuses on community, on quality of life. With the young couple back there helping the older couple, that ultimately that's how I see Provo City. That sense of help from both sides, that sense of community, that sense of quality of life. And I know this will be continued, but with how the way everything's going, but with what's going on as far as ADUs themselves, I'm all in. So thank you.
Okay, if there's no other public comment, I do have one text from Sue Curtis, who was here earlier. She had to leave and she asked that this be read. She thought it was within the 2-minute limit, so I'll read it. First of all, this is the first time I've been in the new city center. It's incredible. I love the waterfall that somehow has words coming out of it. Congratulations to all of you for making this dream a reality. Maybe in an area that's closer to the university where people could abuse the situation and not even be living in the home, it may be a problem. However, I have lived in River Bottoms and northeast area of the city almost 25 years, and there are numerous apparently illegal apartments. We've loved the young couples and singles they brought. They made a wonderful positive contribution to these established neighborhoods. Under the right circumstances, this can be a win-win for all. I know people who are empty nesters but still want to stay in their home and welcome them companionship, someone to help look after and help with the house, and sometimes even financial assistance. Provo is by and large built out with few areas to expand. This allows those just starting out to be a vibrant, contributing part of an established neighborhood. I don't buy into the argument that it makes property values go down. This simply has not been the case with those I've known. With guidelines, we are not talking about an overrunning influx. To mitigate the concerns that seem to be out there, I have suggested that you could, 1, require off-street parking to be available, 2, require the homeowner to be in the home, 3, require an outside entrance, 4, require a separate kitchen, 5, require only one additional rental entity to be renting to, for instance, a married couple or single individual. 6, lower the arbitrary age that you have selected. For instance, most people are empty nesters long before age 65. I personally have no problem with any age being able to. And there is a part of me that also feels that we have a responsibility to absorb and embrace these individuals, but I'm just giving you suggestions of things you could do if you have concerns. Thank you very much for your service. I appreciate your consideration of moving this to further review. Sorry, Heidi's asking if I can email the comments. Yes, I can. All right. There's seeing no further comment from the public, I'll bring it back to the council for discussion. And I'll remind the council again that since this is the first time we've heard, is this the first time we've heard it? I guess it is the first time we've heard it. And because of the reasons Malia mentioned, I would like to request that we continue this item until the next council meeting. I don't say that because we can't have any discussion, but I'm just expressing my desire to continue it, and so we can keep that in mind. If we want to have discussion tonight, we'll have another opportunity. All right, there's a second for that. Mr. Shipley.
Yeah, I would actually move that we vote on items 1 and 2 tonight. I think Malia was talking about item 3 and clarifying just the pathway part of this ordinance. And so if the council is amenable to it, I'd rather look at those first 2 and vote on them. Just have an up or down vote. We have discussed these in multiple work meetings. We're trying to make what I consider to be small incremental adjustments to ADU code to make it a little more, available in the city. So I'd like to vote on anything we possibly can tonight and then work on the part that needs to be worked on.
So help me understand, Mr. Jones. I guess I wasn't paying close attention. The request to continue is based only on number 3?
Yes, that's correct, because through an oversight when, what is it, 1434, or I mean 14.30.040 was sent to the Planning Commission, some additional language that actually described the petition approval process was left out of it. It needs to be added back in, but Councilor Shipley is right that if you simply didn't vote, if you simply excised 14.30.040 from the proposal, still be voting on the west of I-15 proposal and the number of the occupancy proposal, and petition process would just be.
So we need a motion to excise the petition process from the motion tonight.
Yes. Having said that, we need to finalize the process of following the handbook, which is that this, despite the fact that you've discussed this issue a great number of times, this is the first time you're hearing it since it went to Planning Commission. So we need to complete the process of asking if there are 2 counselors that want to continue the entire item. And if there are, it's automatically continued by rule unless there's a motion.
Okay. Rules. In light of that, excuse me. In light of that, I would like to retract my request to continue it. If Mr. Shipley is going to make the motion to vote tonight on 1 and 2, I'm in favor of that. There may be, I know there may be other counselors who feel like it wants to be continued, so we would need 2 votes for that. Otherwise, we would vote on am I getting that right? Otherwise, we would vote on 1 and 2. I mean, what should I do first? Should I ask for?
Well, yeah,
this is very complicated.
I think technically the way our process is written in the handbook, I think it's appropriate for for Councilor Shipley to have announced his intent to do that, and for counselors to know that before opine about whether they want it continued. But our process is to ask that question about whether there are 2 counselors wanting it to be continued before we move to other motions. So knowing that that's on a table, that can now influence the decision,
Okay.
but I think that question needs to be asked before motions are made.
Maybe what I'll do then is I'll ask the council if there are 2 counselors who would wish to continue this item, even if we excise number 3 and the proposal is to vote on 1 and 2 tonight.
Fair enough.
Okay.
I'd like to continue it personally.
Okay. There's one request from Mr. Fillmore.
And my reason is I just think we would benefit from more public comment.
Okay. All right. If there isn't a second, then I will return to Mr. Shipley to ask for a motion.
And maybe just to clarify, it might make more sense to vote on these separately, these 2 issues. So I would just ask the council, would you like to consider them together, or would you like a motion to consider 1 and then a motion to consider 2?
I would prefer 1 by 1.
I second that.
Okay.
Then I move that we just
Okay, so let's do it this way.
strike 2 and 3 then.
I was gonna say we're making it complicated because you've actually got a drafted ordinance that you're looking at. So I would suggest that what you do instead is make a motion one at a time about what stays in the ordinance when you move it to vote. So for instance, a motion to at this time or in this meeting, take the issue of west of I-15 to a final vote.
Oh, I thought you were meaning the opposite. Start with things that we think.
You could do it. Well, yeah. So
Eliminate one at a time.
well, okay. Well, and that would work too. You could, I mean, we know we want that one off, so we can take that one off. And then you could leave it to a motion to see if somebody else wants to take another one off. But when you take 3 off, you've still got 1 and 2 left. So, but it makes sense to start that way and make the motion to take 3 off first.
So I'll move to take 3 off.
So it's just to clarify, it's a substitute motion that would change the inferred motion and remove item number
Correct.
3. Okay.
Yeah.
With the
Is
assumption
there
that
a
we'll see it
second?
again.
Is there a second on Mr. Shipley's motion to remove number 3?
I'll second.
Okay, there's a second. Any discussion?
Yes. My only concern is that I guess there's a possibility that the third item might not come back to us. I think they're all integrated. Just talk, if we have a consensus that we will address the third item for sure, we're just looking to refine the language for the procedure, I'd be okay with that. The idea of taking out the ordinance and possibly not coming back to it for whatever reason doesn't strike me as a good idea since it's an integrated concept from our housing committee.
Can we make a substitute motion to say, I will make a substitute motion to ask the housing committee to come back to us with language on item number 3? Is there a second on that?
Yeah, let's call
Is
it.
that an amendment to the?
I think
I was just gonna say, yeah,
There's
let's
this
call it-
amendment to the
let's call it
substitute
a-
motion.
Let's call it an amended motion,
Okay.
amending the substitute motion. And the motion is, as I understand it, to remove item number 3 from the current ordinance, but to have the housing committee bring it back at a later time.
Yes.
This year.
Okay, that's the,
At our next meeting,
that's the substitute, that's the amended
Motion.
substituted motion.
can I amend?
Do
the
we need a second for
substituted
that?
motion?
Second.
Yes. Okay, is there a second for my
second.
amendment?
I think, yeah. Happy
Okay.
to.
Counselor Ellsworth seconds that. Any discussion?
Yes. I don't think we leave it open for some time this year. I think we bring it back in 2 weeks.
Well, that's
the
great. That's
assumption.
the intent. I think
Counselor
housing
Fillmore, it
committee
sounds
will
like
do
you
that.
should make a motion.
He wants to make I'll make an amendment to my amendment and I will say in 2 weeks. Counselor Ellsworth, do you agree with that?
Second, the second amendment to the substitute motion.
All right. So, is there now any discussion?
Not on that.
Okay, good. We're making progress. All right. So, we will call for a vote on the amended substitute motion to eliminate item number 3 for now, to send it back to the committee and have it returned to us within 2 weeks. I will.
Hold on, Malia, are you trying to interject?
Do I do anything on?
Not yet, but if it passes, then I'm going to give you instructions about what to do
great.
before we move on.
Great.
Okay. I will begin with myself, Chair Handley. I will vote yes. Vice Chair McKay,
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor Hoban.
Yes.
Okay, that is unanimous. So now we are entertaining items number 1 and 2
Yes.
is as our implied motion.
Yes. So in order to make that happen, Malia, strike section 14.30.040 in its entirety. And then go back up to
My
the
question is,
subsection
should-
5 that you were at a second ago. And delete B,
Yeah.
And-
Everybody's voting. Consider.
put a period at the end of A.
Brian, I think the suggestion was made that we vote separately on items 1 and 2. How does the package?
Well, I mean, that was discussed. I'm confused about now how to have you do that without creating 2 ordinances with, I mean, it seems to me like the best way to do that is now, if there is somebody that doesn't want one of those 2 to pass,
Then they make a
that person
motion.
should make a motion to excise that one too.
Yeah. I think we have to vote on it as a item. We can discuss each item. And then I would recommend we discuss each item and we decide whether we vote for it as a bundle or whether we're opposed to one part or another. And if that's the case, then you can make a substitute motion. That makes sense?
Sure.
Okay. So any discussion let's start with the first item,
Yeah. So West Side.
West Side.
Well, I think the 2 to 3 might be an easier item to discuss. No? I was
Could be.
thinking you start with the smaller one and then go to the larger one, but maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Item number 2 is the number, right?
Yeah.
Any discussion about this issue?
I'll start.
Okay, Mr. Fillmore?
Here's my concern. I think the whole ADU question begs uncertainty about the future. Yeah, I'm concerned that we ought to be more cautious in how we expand ADUs in the city. We ought to learn from the experience of other communities that are plunging ahead and to greater extent. My own preference would be that we stay with 2 as opposed to 3, that incremental change is not necessary immediately. That's coupled with my concern that once we make these changes, expanding ADUs, they essentially become irreversible. I think we ought to be more cautious. So I would vote against expanding to 3.
Anyone else?
I have a-
Councilor Ellsworth?
Yeah, I'm very much in favor of 3. I think it simplifies things for our code enforcement team. It's very difficult to enforce regardless, but I think simplicity always makes code enforcement more easy for a citizen to understand and for an employee to enforce. Additionally, I'm not sure that we have the legal standing with the state to keep enforcing on 2 people per unit. It seems like that was called into question a few months ago. Looking at you, Mr. Brian Jones.
There's definitely a question about whether we have that authority, and I don't believe that we are enforcing 2, and probably would not enforce 2 unless the state changes their statute.
Are you saying the state requires 3 or more?
Yes. And there is a legal argument that has been made why the state's requirement of 3 might not apply to Provo City's ordinance. And when this chapter 14.30 was originally passed, there were counselors that were in favor of leaving it, of putting it at 2, under the idea that they might seek clarification from the state so that we could have that clarification. But because of the ambiguity, Bill's here and may be able to speak to it if he wants to, but I don't believe that 2 is currently being enforced, and I don't think it would be enforced without state explicitly authorizing it.
You're saying your best interpretation is we'd be in violation of the state statute
Yes.
to limit it to 2 in the absence of a legislative change.
Councilor McKay?
Could we get clarification if they are enforcing on that or not? Because my understanding was that we were enforcing and that we thought we could stick with it since we already had 2, but if we changed it, we could never go back to 2.
I mean, Scott Johnson's not here from code enforcement. In speaking with the attorneys in my office that work on code enforcement, I'm not aware of an occupancy case that we have prosecuted.
So we currently are enforcing on 2 if we see that there are 2, but we haven't had any issues with 2 occupancy.
So there's not any open cases, but it's the intended practice to enforce.
Right. Correct.
My concern with going to 3 is that I think it will push out the married couples. I just think they're going to get more money with 3 singles. So it'll favor generally 3 singles and make it harder for couples and families to get those ADUs. And I think there's more limited couple and young family housing as opposed to single housing. So I think that I just worry about that. That's just one of my concerns.
I'll just say, I was, I think, one of the counselors who was a little confused at the time when we were discussing the 2 and 3, and I voted for 2 and then realized later that we had done so without proper understanding. And so I would prefer to go back to 3. Obviously, I think we need 2, it sounds like, to be in compliance, but I think this is I don't share that concern about possibly bumping out couples, in the sense that I think a lot of people who have the opportunity to have an ADU in their house will make the decision as to whether or not this is something they need or want to give to a couple or to single individuals my guess is the predominant preference will be for couples anyway. So I don't think it'll be a big problem. Counselor Whipple?
So one of the reasons that I'm in support of changing it to 3 is because that makes it consistent with our definition of family in 14.06.020, which defines as family 3 related or unrelated individuals and any children of either individual, if any. And so I think it's good to have that consistency in the code that this is a family for any kind of a household unit. I also am very leery of giving preference to one kind of family unit over another kind of family unit. And that just makes me incredibly uncomfortable that we would do that in our code. And so I see this as a way of both being in compliant with the state code and getting greater consistency within our own Provo City Code.
Okay. So let me just point out maybe what's obvious, but remind people we will not necessarily be able to come to agreement on these issues. So in the discussion, it's nice to know where people are. But if we're waiting for unanimous feeling on one or both of these issues, I doubt we're going to get there. I just wanted to point that out. But any further discussion on this issue before we move back to the other one?
Yeah, I just, so I think we already kind of had a sense of the vote on this coming into this meeting. So I just echo that. I think we can move on. And if there's a different vote for item 1, going back to item 1, then you're going to vote on item 2. Then I think it's relevant to separate these 2 out. But if people are consistent between the 2, then I think we can vote sooner than later on both.
Okay.
I think we should vote on the 2 to 3 first, and then debate the broader issue of ADU's west side.
Mr. Jones, can we do like a provisional sort of straw vote?
Well, yeah, I mean, what I was suggesting is that you make a motion for the change from 2 to 3 to be included in the final version of the ordinance that you will later vote on. If that vote passes, then you move on to the next one and know that it's going to be included in the ordinance.
All right. So do I have a motion? It sounds like Mr. Hoban is making that motion.
I don't know how to make this motion, but I'll make a motion that we vote to include the 2 to 3 in the final version of the document.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Councilor Ellsworth seconds. Any discussion? Call for a vote. I will start with Vice Chair McKay.
Are we clear with the vote?
We're voting on whether to include the amendment to move from 2 to 3 in the final version. We're voting to include this in the final version.
This is the final
In simplest terms, do you want it to go from 2 to 3 or
If
not?
you're absolutely opposed to it, then you can strike it out now. Otherwise, although it doesn't necessarily mean you're. Okay, so Vice Chair McKay?
No.
Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore?
No.
Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Shipley?
Yes.
Councilor Hoban?
Yes.
Chair Handley, I'll vote yes. So that vote is 5 in favor, 2 against, with Councilors Fillmore and McKay opposed. So now we need to have a motion to include the first one. Let me recommend that we do that first, and then we can have the discussion of the item. No.
That's fine. Again, I would say, and this was the point I was trying to make before, the implied motion already includes it. From a strictly procedural standpoint, the better practice would be if somebody wants it out, they should make a motion to remove it, and we should see whether that actually passes or not. But you can do it the other way if that's more comfortable for
All right. If someone wants to make that motion, go for it. Otherwise, we'll just discuss it, and then so no one's making that motion. Okay, let's discuss it then. Mr. Shipley?
Yeah, and I think we've talked through this as well, but I just wanted to point out some rationale for the west side, west of I-15. I feel like some of the comments that I've heard, are why are you making the west side the testing ground for ADUs? Why are you bagging on the west side again? We always get picked on. I live on the west side, so first of all, that's you can send it to me. I'm fine with that. I didn't ever consider this as a situation where we were creating a testing ground for ADUs or a guinea pig for ADUs on the west side. I think ADUs are a positive. So I don't view it as a negative, that we're deploying on the west side. I also view it as something very rational in that if you talk to people on the west side, their number one thing about Provo is that there's a lack of connectivity between the west side and the rest of Provo. And that's because I-15 creates a very natural barrier for transportation between the city and the campus and what goes on the west side. And so as we've looked at opportunities to expand ADUs, I think it's a rational first approach to the expansion of ADUs to have it be somewhere that does have that connectivity issue or barrier from the rest of the city and from the campus. I will also say that when we originally passed ADU expansion, we passed it in a way that met the state requirement, but didn't meet, and we've talked about this, didn't meet the spirit of what they were trying to do at all. We've got a bunch of zones that we've put ADUs onto that can't have ADUs, right? And won't ever have the possibility of ADUs. So the idea also here is to actually come in more compliance with state law and expand ADUs in a relevant way, but in a rational way that doesn't make it something that we feel like will spin completely out of control. And one of the things, I've talked to a couple of the neighborhood chairs from the west side that have concerns, legitimate concerns about compliance on internal ADUs in the city. And one of the things I committed to them, and I'll just commit publicly here, is that if we find from our compliance department that this spins out of control somehow, that we can't foresee at this point, and all of a sudden we have just hundreds of applications coming in for ADUs, and we feel like that's not a public good to have that many, I don't see why the council can't, put some cap. At some point, if we felt like this was going to spin out of control, we could pass an ordinance to put some kind of cap on the total amount of ADUs if we felt like it was getting out of control. So this isn't just a set it and forget it. It's not a trial period. It's not a guinea pig. It's something I feel like is a net positive for folks. And so I'm happy for it on the west side, even though I can't do it myself. And I feel like there's a rationale for it, but I also feel like it's something we continue to watch how compliance, deals with ADUs and how the application totals come in. We can track those. We can see how many applications come in, but I see it as a huge net positive to have folks who are potentially illegally having ADUs now come into compliance and be legal. And then I also think it's a huge positive for home ownership and for affordable housing in the city of Provo.
Thank you. Mr. Fillmore.
I always appreciate Mr. Shipley's logic and his thoughtfulness, and my concern is I don't get this sense that the west side is begging us to do this. I don't know that we've adequately taken into account their concerns for this. That's why I thought it might merit another couple of weeks and some greater public discussion. I think once you open up, I'm not sure how we, with all due respect to Mr. Shipley, I'm not sure how you get those cows back in the barn. I mean, we could impose a limit down the road if there was some massive, application level, but I'm not sure how that would look, frankly. I can appreciate the fact that it maybe puts us in more honest compliance with the state statute in terms of its letter and its spirit. The other thought I've had, it has to do with Ms. Bogdan's comment about move-up homes. I've thought that through. It seems to me that those homes, even if they do have an ADU component temporarily, automatically convert to a move-up home if the new buyers don't want people in the basement. You don't necessarily lose a move-up home option. So for me, it's kind of a mixed bag, but I do wish we had more input from the west side itself.
Any other discussion? Councilor Ellsworth?
I just appreciate Councilor Shipley's thoughts. I hope no one feels like this is a punishment because I do think it is an opportunity. I genuinely believe that this expands people's private property rights, which I feel like is a really positive thing. And to Mr. Fillmore's point, there's plenty of opportunity for a younger couple with 1 or 2 kids to buy a house with an ADU. And then when they have 3 or 4 kids, or their kids need their own rooms because they're arguing too much, then they can end that lease with the downstairs tenant and move their awesome teenagers into the basement. So,
Shove them into the basement.
no. But I just see that as a really net positive for our community, for families. I think especially in the current housing market, it's really hard for someone who bought a house in the last 5 or 10 years to be able to sell that house and find something even bigger in this market. So you're almost stuck in the house you bought 4 years ago. And how, as your family grows, are you going to expand? And hopefully this gives someone in our community the opportunity to do just that without selling their home and sending their kids to the Provo Elementary School, the Provo Middle School, and the Provo High School without moving to a Springville High School or a Mapleton High School. And anyways, I just see this kind of continuity and longevity in our community as a bonus as well. And the flexibility that facilitates that can really add stability to our neighborhoods.
So you're really emphasizing owner flexibility. Young couple buys what is essentially a move-up home. They convert it to an ADU home temporarily, perhaps, and it'll be converted to a move-up home later.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I have family members that live in ADUs, and it's a really good situation for them. I wish my younger brother could afford a home. I wonder if one day he could buy a good sized family home and he and his wife and 2 kids could live in the basement and rent the upstairs, which probably has stronger rents, to a bigger family or a family with a higher income. And then one day when they have more income, they could switch that situation, or they could just take on the full. So there's lots of flexibility that this allows people, and it's not flexibility that the current market or interest rates are affording people. It's really constrained right now.
Well, I do take some comfort in the reality that the ADU requirements will still be in place with any particular home.
Let's not.
Owner occupied, off-street parking, et cetera.
I just want to make sure everyone's having a chance to comment. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Hoban.
It's not a comment, more so I have a question. I wanted to get that question answered around the Ivory development, Broadview Shores, SDP 5. Bill, is that something you can come up and discuss? So my understanding was that Ivory had originally committed to, when they built, or, you know, as they're building, they had said, you know, we won't build any ADUs in these homes because we're already going to have, it's going to be pretty dense overall. And so I was kind of surprised when I read the actual draft that those, and I misread it at first, but they are included. So basically ADUs would be allowed in those areas. And that ends up being a big concern for me, because I'm thinking like, wow, that really changes the dynamic of those new builds. So I'm looking at, you know, the west side now, where we're going to be adding, changing some of these agricultural zones and such, and thinking if all of that green on the map were built out with ADUs, all the Ivory was built out with potentially could have ADUs, how that ends up increasing cost of ownership and to purchase those homes, although it would be offset with rental income. But in general, how that really changes the dynamic of a lot of that on the west side that's soon to be developed in the next, 10 or 20 years. So I just wanted clarity around that. I ran it by Brian, and Brian thought the text is included per the text. So I guess I was more concerned about the intent, right? When we were discussing ADUs, did we intend to have all the Ivory and stuff included or not? Or
I'm not sure. I can tell you that several years ago, when Ivory asked you to change their zoning, they kept out of that or prohibited ADUs, and they redid their zoning very recently. Have you approved that already, or has that still to come to you? It's been to Planning Commission. Have you recently changed the zoning on Ivory's development at Broadview Shores?
The big one that was from a long time ago?
Yes.
Yes, we did.
So that updated zoning also didn't allow for ADUs. So they've done that. They've
prohibited themselves from that twice. So I'm not exactly sure why it got put back in. I haven't been to all the housing committee meetings, so I'm not sure why that got put back in, but Ivory voluntarily gave up that right when they did the last 2 zone changes on their property through you.
But when you say that their updated zoning prohibits it, are you talking about the development agreement prohibiting it, or the text of the SPD 5 zone?
That's Aaron's project. He's the expert. My understanding in talking to Aaron was I thought the text of the SDP 5 disallowed it.
Right. And that may be, I think as Travis is pointing out, I think that this
Would trump that?
trumps it.
Okay.
And that was the reason why I asked the question, because the one thing that I hadn't considered when I was asking Travis's question is if the development agreement says that it's prohibited, then it may still be prohibited even though the code allows it. But I don't know that that's in the development agreement.
I would be surprised if it's in the development agreement. If we put it in the zone, I would be surprised if we also put it in the development agreement.
So maybe this is a question for the housing committee members. What was the intent? Is this a surprise, or was intended? Kind of a surprise for me, as I was supportive of the West idea originally, but I was assuming that the Ivory stuff wouldn't be included. So maybe Dave, you can respond. I don't know.
Well, and I can't speak for the whole committee, but my thought was any HOAs, any developments, anything that precluded ADUs currently would still preclude ADUs. I didn't think we were trumping anything that current, status quo anywhere, that prohibits them at this point. So we might need to obviously
given
clarify
that, I'm going to kind of, can I second Bill's motion? I think we should probably continue it to get some clarity on this. So I don't know how we would vote and clear up, because we voted yes on the 2 to 3. So I don't want to lose that, right? I don't want to lose the progress we made. But I would say it's probably a big enough issue for me personally to want to get some clarity around to continue this item.
Councilor Hoban, let me make this suggestion. If said, and what I'm understanding your intent to be, rather than continuing the item, it may be better to do the same thing that we just did a moment ago with number 3, and for you to make a motion to excise this issue from the ordinance and for the housing committee to bring it back in 2 weeks. And then you could have a vote on the implied motion, which now has nothing in it except for the 2 to 3.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we excise item 1 and bring it back in 2 weeks.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any discussion of that motion?
I just wonder if staff could create an amendment to this so that we can vote on it as opposed to waiting for 2 weeks. Is there a way to get it to a point that can exclude existing zones that preclude ADUs from them from having it in primarily residential properties on the west side? Does that make sense? It just seems kind of simple, but I don't know if it's too complicated to do on the fly.
Give me 1 second to look at the SPD 5 zone and see if it even does prohibit them.
Brian, I'm not sure if that zone has been updated online, but the ordinance is 2022-31. If you want to review the recent amendment.
Dave, to answer your question, I think we could draft a quick amendment, but I don't know how thorough. If we wait, I can give you a really thorough list to review of all the zones that would include. But if I drafted one right now, it would, it's up to you guys how you want.
Can I ask you a question
Elizabeth,
here?
Sorry, I apologize for interrupting. Elizabeth, do you have the issue file instead of the?
Yes,
We need to
it
find it.
is. Let me find it.
Or
So
else we're-
PLOTA 2022-0107.
You have a question, Councilor Ellsworth?
Yeah, I just wondered, Councilor Hoban, are you mostly concerned about that one development that's about to be built?
Yeah, that's a good question. I appreciate you asking it. So a lot of those lots are going to be like 6,000 square feet. Not all of them.
In the one development? Is that?
In the one development that takes up a good chunk of the west side. I mean, I don't know if it's one development or multiple, but Ivory has a ton of property up there that they're going to develop over the coming years. And so my concern is, I guess it is broader in that, you know, we got a lot of agricultural that's going to be rezoned into residential at some point, I would assume. And these smaller lots, I don't think that it necessarily makes sense when you have a higher level of density already to say, okay, yeah, we're going to add ADUs, because it's going to lead to some of the issues that we currently have issues with in regards to complaints by people or whatever. So I guess broader, I would say smaller lot sizes are a concern for me in general. So I don't know if it's simpler to say any lot size under X square feet would not have an ADU or what. I don't know. Is on the housing committee, what was it ever discussed, you know, maybe we should have a minimum lot size or anything like that? No.
No, it wasn't.
I think that there's kind of an implied minimum lot size because of the parking and some of those issues, but
You know, but yeah, but in in Broadview Shores, you still have 2 garage spots and two driveway spots. So
yeah. I mean, there is a certain size though where you
Yeah.
can't get any smaller. Yeah.
Yeah.
Does Broadview Shores, the ones that are built, do they have a side yard where you could put a RV pad or a third car?
As far as I'm aware, like it's not big enough for that. So they have
Either
like
side.
no, not that so sorry. There's a variety of different home sizes that Ivory has built. Some are half acre, some are 3/4, but most are, 6,000 square, and most moving forward are going to be that like 6,000 square foot size lots. And those I think they have like a 50-inch side yard on each side or something like that.
Oh, okay.
It's pretty small.
Okay.
But some lots are 8,000. Like you get the closer you get to Provo High, the bigger the lot gets.
Yeah.
If you're familiar with the area. So it's mostly as you kind of get away where they're like have built slightly north, there's like an unfinished road and that's where you've got like the 6,000 square foot lots that would be that type of lot would be a concern. But
Brian, where are we? Do you think this is on the flyable? That's a word.
I think it's on the flyable as much as that's a word. No, I'm kidding. I think so looking at it, the is it DP or PD? SDP 5 zone does prohibit accessory apartments and units by its own text. So I think we could salvage all of this if we add to what's on the screen right now, right there at the end of Highway 15, if we add language that says, except as specifically prohibited by the text of the zone. And then that would say, and so that would salvage the SDP 5 in and of itself because its own language prohibits it.
So Mr. Hoban, what is your feeling in light of that information about?
that's good information. I appreciate that. I think big picture, I would like to get some thoughts back from the housing committee on minimum lot size in general. And are there other zones where it automatically does preclude, like an HOA wouldn't, right? So I think there's a broader discussion. I'm not trying to be difficult. I know Dave wants to get some stuff done because he's been working on this and he's tired of the back and forth. So I want to try to accommodate that, but I do think it's a big enough issue of we got to probably hammer this out.
Can I ask why is it a big issue?
It's a big enough issue for me, I guess. I should say.
But I guess what I can't, it seems to me that the lot size, as Councilor Ellsworth alluded to, there's a point at which it becomes impractical, impossible, and so it doesn't happen. But if it's possible with all the other restrictions, I don't know why we would say to anyone, it feels arbitrary to me to say your size is too low, even though you can meet all the other requirements, we're not going to let you do it.
It's a matter of density. So for example,
But
if you have 500 units, sorry, go ahead. Keep
No,
going.
no, I interrupted you.
If you have 500 units that are going in and a vast majority of those, you know, could be built with an ADU and they have 6,000, you know, square foot lots or something like that, or 5,000 square foot lots, I think long term that creates a problem from a standpoint of just the density issue overall.
For larger ones.
No, for smaller lots. So like an R110, right? If an R110 is a 10,000 square foot lot, but a lot of these homes that are being built now are going to be 5, 6, 7,000 square foot lots. So half the size, but you're still allowing a pretty significant potential, I'll say potential density increase when you already have a significant density increase already, if that makes sense. So it's easier for an R110 neighborhood to absorb more density than an than lots that are 5 or 6 or 7,000 square feet is my rationale. I could be totally wrong, but that's my thought process.
That's helpful. I just wanted to understand that better. I would just say, and maybe we're just not going to resolve this tonight, and we're 3 minutes to 9. So I intend to wrap this up here if we can. But I mean, I think at some point we start imagining scenarios that may not actually be as likely as we think, right? Because if you have a house that's my home's 3,000 square feet or 32, I can't remember. If I had a space for an ADU and I used it, or I used it for my own children, I don't know how we say that the density goes up just because somebody's in there that might also be there with a family. So it just seems to me that, and in the end, I think we have to keep our eye on the fact that we're trying to provide more housing. And I go back to that couple who spoke tonight. There's huge numbers of people who are in need and would take it. And if we're going to send them elsewhere outside of Provo to get housing, then they're going to be driving to Provo and from Spanish Fork, and they're going to be, polluting our air and creating traffic for us because we can't accommodate them within the city. So for me, it's not, I'm just expressing my opinion about that concern. I'm not saying, I think actually, maybe I'll just sort of say the issue still seems to me, if two counselors want to continue this item, then it's continued. If not, then I think we need to vote on whether or not we want to do the west side and the 2 to 3 with the language that Brian has proposed. So I'll just ask again, given all of our discussion now, is there a desire for 2 counselors to continue this item?
So I would like to strike item 1 for now and revisit it in 2 weeks. And let's vote on item 2. And just to give direction to staff of what I would be looking for, I'd like to understand, based on this on the fly change that we were contemplating, how that would impact. So what zones would that include, or what areas would that include, right? So it's the SDP. Are there any others? So let me address the HOA issue and minimum lot size. I would like that discussed.
You need to make a motion then to strike
item 1.
I think you did make that motion, right? But can I ask?
I was giving some clarity about what I'm looking for as we come back next week to try to move things
forward. Let me
forward.
clarify that Mr. Hoban's making a motion to strike number 1 with the instructions that he's just alluded to for the staff.
Yeah, I think that's what's happening. I'd like to ask a couple of clarifying questions if I might. Tell me what the HOA issue is.
Well, so if I misheard you, tell me, but Councilor Shipley was saying the intent wasn't necessarily like supersede HOAs where they're not allowed right now, or in zones where they don't make sense or aren't allowed, like the SDP 5 zone or whatever. And so I was saying, okay, let's explore that. Let's talk about that.
Okay.
Let's have the housing committee discuss that.
The reason why I asked is because, to the extent that the issue is whether we are intending to supersede HOA requirements or not, the point is moot because HB 82 already superseded HOA.
Right. But the intent wasn't that we Like, I don't know. I don't know if there's some big development, right, where HOAs aren't allowed, that wasn't our intent to go in and say that development needs to now allow ADUs where it's not. I get what you're saying in that
Okay,
HB, you know,
where they are, in essence.
where
you're
they're
saying-
not
in
allowed
essence-
right now based on Provo City law.
In essence, you're
Right.
saying the state law may have already superseded the HOA, but the fact that we didn't allow them yet still prohibits them.
Correct.
And okay, I understand
Yeah.
what you're asking.
So it's
for.
more about the intent of it. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so is there a second on Mr. Hoban's motion to strike number 1 and have it brought back in 2 weeks with staff input?
Point of clarification, is he really asking to amend the ordinance or is he just asking for 2 votes to punt to our next meeting?
We're striking number 1 right now,
He's
and it's
making a
going to
motion
come back in
strike.
2 weeks.
I'll second that.
Okay, that has been seconded. Any discussion?
Yeah, I propose that we vote on it as it is. So I guess a substitute motion that we vote now on the ordinance as it is
Without amendment.
without amendment.
Okay.
Now that, I mean, it's
Added in that
amended.
language?
No, it's amended with the, where it says except where specifically
Okay.
prohibited,
Yeah, yeah.
but we're voting on 1 and 2.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
I'll second that.
Counselor Whipple seconds that. Is there a discussion of that motion?
Yes. If we're going to go forward, then there's a massive discussion that needs to occur from my perspective. Yep, tonight. So we can either punt it for 2 weeks but there's a lot of points I want to make about ADUs in general, the west side, et cetera. So,
But Travis, I think we're to a point where it's like, you've got a list of things that will be a reason to vote no. And we might as well not wait 2 weeks to get your vote no. We might as well get your
Well-
vote no tonight and move on.
right, but what we just discussed could have potential significant implications that might make it easier for me to vote yes if we get some answers around that. But if we're voting yes, if we're voting tonight, then I have to vote no because I don't have answers
I think
around
Mr.
that. That's what I'm
Shipley's,
saying.
I think Mr. Shipley's aware of that possibility.
And that's fine if there's not the votes, but I'm just saying I can't vote yes right now. So,
Can I add something real quick?
Yes.
So one of the reasons we didn't discuss the minimum size lot requirements was because we were looking at the off-street parking requirements. That's the biggest complaint that we have about ADUs and the increased density is the way it affects people's ability to park on their streets and that feeling of congestion. If people with those smaller lots do have the off-street parking capacity to get an ADU permitted and approved, then you don't have those adverse density impacts to the community. So the lot size becomes irrelevant because you've taken care of the issue.
on paper, yes, but from a practical standpoint, most people are not going to actually have their renters double park on their driveway. They're going to park in the street. So it's a practical issue. On paper, it sounds fine. In my district, I have a neighborhood chair who's pro ADU, but also sent me a picture that I could show if we wanted to of the six, he says, of the 6 ADUs in my neighborhood, 4 of them don't use, I can confirm that 4 of them don't use the parking spots in the driveway. They just park on the street. Now he says it's not a problem in my neighborhood because there's plenty of street parking, but I can guarantee you in an Ivory home, development with 6,000 or less square foot lots, you're going to have parking issues.
Chair Hanley.
Yes, thank you. I need some help.
Just a
My head's spinning.
I was going to say, if I might just make a procedural observation, there is a motion on the table. And, procedurally, there's certainly discussion that can and should be allowed on the motion, but our normal practice is not to engage in debate from the dais, but just to allow each counselor to make their
Right.
point about the motion.
Yeah, that's why I said what I said earlier about let's, focus on not necessarily trying to convince each other, but if we feel like we have something we need to say, that's fine. But given the hour, my confusion is this. If we vote on the bundled 1 and 2 and it passes, I'm worried about counselors feeling like they had a chance to delay it for 2 weeks. I mean, I've offered several times if there are two votes to delay it, they can, but it got a little murky toward here at the end because there were motions and counter motions. So that's where I'm stuck.
Well, I mean, I think that's a valid point, and I suppose if you wanted to, for in abundance of caution, you could renew that question. Seems to me
I've done it.
I'm trying to remember exactly how you phrased the question exactly. I think you phrased the question as are there two people that want to continue it based on the assumption that we're going to excise number 3? And you didn't get two answers and that happened. So I'd be inclined to argue that we're past that point and we just need to handle the motion table.
Okay.
But I think that's in your discretion as the chair.
Whoa, wait a minute. Aren't we still in a position where two people could ask to postpone this question, item number 1?
Well, that's the discussion point that Councillor Handley and I are just having right now, right? I mean,
Right,
we've proceeded well past.
I've asked twice, actually.
but that was in a different context.
I mean, there's certainly nothing at any point in time that prevents a councillor from making a motion to continue it.
Yeah.
It's a question of whether it's automatically continued by rule. And I guess I would say, depending on where, I would also remind the council, depending on where the votes are at, that even if there are two councillors that want to continue it, one of the remaining 5 could still make a motion to suspend the rules, and that rule could be suspended and the vote could continue forward. It's
And
not-
how is that rule suspended on what vote?
That would take a vote of 5. So if there's a motion to,
That doesn't make sense. Two people can say they want it continued, and then the 5 people vote and say, no, I don't want it continued.
Yeah,
Correct.
they can override that rule.
Correct.
Get it
Because
done.
now, and again, recognize this is a rule specific to, this is a rule of.
I guess it does. It's not inevitable that it's breaking down to 5 and 2.
Right.
But if it is breaking down to 5 and 2, the 5 win.
Now, and remember, this
Okay.
is a rule, this is an invented rule of procedure by the Provo Council that has
I
evolved.
just want to
over
make
time.
sure we're following that rule. Okay.
Originally, it was one person. right?
I'm going to ask if I'll give a final call if there's a motion to continue this item.
I'll take a motion to continue it.
I'll second that.
So that has been seconded. Counselor McKay made the motion. Counselor Hoban seconded. Is there a discussion?
So you're now, you're taking a formal motion rather than the automatic. You're not invoking the automatic rule at this point. You're asking for a formal motion to continue.
So the question is, can we? invoke
It's
the
automatic
rule?
unless there's a motion to counter it.
But
Okay.
aren't there other motions on?
Yeah. So, gosh,
Well, and that,
so I'm sorry. This is,
and that's why I was asserting that I think the point. has
I
already
should
been
not have
passed.
done that.
Because I think your original question was, I think when the rule in question applied to the discussion, you asked, presuming that we cut out item number 3, are there two counselors that want to continue this item anyway? There were not, and item 3 was cut out.
Okay.
So I believe
think
that the council handbook rule has already been answered.
I think the preferred method, if for those of you who are opposed to what's being proposed, should vote accordingly, and we'll see where that vote goes. So the motion on the table by Mr. Hoban.
Well, Mr. Hoban made a substitute motion to excise
number 1, and we haven't voted on that yet.
You haven't voted on it yet, but then Councillor Shipley made another motion to vote as is.
Okay, so we need a second on that vote, and that came from Councillor Whipple, so we're going to vote as is.
Correct.
And we're not going to honor the two counselor members wish to continue it.
Well, my interpretation
Jones.
is that we did honor that because the question was asked, and at the time it was asked, there were not two counselors. That
I've
said they
never
wanted
heard
to.
that of
No,
there
no, no.
being a time limit on the purpose or the continuation.
Well, there's not a time limit. It comes at a specific point in the process.
But that was in a different context earlier. Much different context. In fact, there were 2, and at different times 3 that wanted to continue.
Listen, I'm pushing this as much as anybody, but we've got 3 counselors that want to continue it. I'm fine to continue it and look at this next time. So as much as I'd like us to just vote on this, and I think we're just deferring this for 2 weeks and we're going to get the exact same 4-3 vote that we would have had tonight, which is painful because we spent this much time and we're going to do it again in 2 weeks. I mean, that's pathetic, but in deference to
the fact that we've got 3 people that want to continue it, I think we should.
Okay.
Well, I'll really acknowledge that we're at that stage of discussion where we are engaging in a debate that, to quote Fiddler on the Roof, could cross a rabbi's eyes.
Yeah.
But-
I would recommend if.
But I
when-
think Travis's points are legitimate, that there are some things that ought to be clarified.
in 2 weeks' time, I suggest we get those things clarified from staff and then we vote. I think we've talked about this endlessly, honest, but that's my
I'll
opinion.
add that we talked about this ad nauseum in the year 2021.
Yeah.
And we came to no great resolution, and here we are again.
Okay. So we will
And months into
continue
that
this item
process.
with the instructions given to staff. And I've already lost my script, which I
But
think
in
says
the
something.
meantime, can we go ahead and vote on it with approval for the second item, the 2 to 3 that already passed?
Right. I mean, again, we're creating a fine web, but I would interpret Councillor Shipley's latest statement as him withdrawing his motion, which leaves Councillor Hoban's motion to excise number 1 on the table. You could vote on that motion, because again, we haven't, other than the chair saying I'm going to invoke the rule, we haven't really followed the procedure for the rule. So
I'm going to invoke the rule that 3 counselors want to continue
Okay.
the item and I'm okay in continuing it.
Okay.
Okay. We are item number 11 has been continued. So if there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo City Council and convene. No, we're not convening. Are we convening?
Yeah, we're convening as the
Oh
RDA
my
board of Provo
Lord.
City.
Okay, we are convening as the redevelopment agency of Provo by unanimous consent. Okay, there is no objection.
Great. We will, as a board, hear one item, a resolution regarding the transfer of property located
Mr.
generally.
Holmes, we thought we sent you home.
Are we ready to go, board members?
Yes,
Yeah, okay. Just getting some.
we need
some,
attention on this
some
item, please.
Side conversations. A resolution regarding the transfer of property located generally along SR 75 at the Springville boundary line from the RDA to Gateway Crossing Development in order to facilitate the platting and development of a new adjacent public street. And this will be presented by staff member Dixon Holmes, Deputy DAO.
Does the RDA board have any questions of me on this matter that was discussed earlier, but more than happy to answer any questions that you might have or give a brief overview for the benefit of the board or the public?
Can you give us just a 1-minute overview for the sake of
Sure.
the public in case
Sure.
they didn't hear the work meeting?
This is a laser pointer. Oh. You can turn around just for a second. So this piece labeled Provo City is actually owned by the Provo City RDA. And this piece was addressed earlier by the Provo City Municipal Council. This piece right here is again owned by the RDA. And this action this evening at this moment is to surplus that piece, make a part of it, the transfer to the property owner to the east in exchange for them giving up his right to access SR 75 and join in with Provo City to have access to our to be publicly dedicated street.
Just for the sake of the public, this is a multi-step process, multiple property owners, and multiple regulatory procedures that must occur in order to abandon, dedicate right-of-way, and then readjust city boundary lines.
Yes.
So is there any question or comment from the RDA board? No. Is there any comment from the public? Apparently not. Okay. If there's no discussion on this, then we will call for a vote on the implied motion. I'm not getting any discussion on
I'll
this
call
item.
for a vote.
So I will call for the vote.
I called for a vote.
So would you like to make a motion?
I will make a motion that we
Okay.
vote.
Okay.
I'll second that.
So you're making a motion that we
To approve the item.
approve the resolution.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I make a motion that we approve the resolution.
And I also second that.
Okay, so that is, the motion was made by Board Member Handley and seconded by Board Member Shipley. And now if there's no conversation, we will call for a vote. Let's start with Board Member Shipley,
Yes.
Board Member Fillmore, Board Member Handley.
Yes.
Board Member McKay,
Yes.
Board Member Vice Chair, Whipple,
Yes.
Board Member Hoban,
Yes.
and I, Chair Ellsworth, will vote yes.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for enduring with us. Okay, I think that concludes the business of the RDA board, and we will formally adjourn this meeting by
Unanimous consent.
unanimous consent. Thank you. Don't have my chair notes.